I think so. All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to a Volusia County School Board workshop. And would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, welcome everyone, and for those listening via the internet. So for the record, let me just say that we are all here except for Mr. Ruben Colon, who indicated to me earlier that he probably would not be able to be here for the entire workshop. He was hoping to be able to be here for the school board meeting, which we have scheduled today at 3:30, correct? Correct. All right, good. So let's go ahead then and get started. Our first item of business today is a presentation about the administrative and instructional staffing and how our staffing and salaries compare to those in the state. And Ms. Deb Muller is here. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Persis and fellow board members and Mr. Russell. This morning we have one PowerPoint for the duration of just continue through. The agenda is the administrative and instructional staffing information that we presented last year, as well as tentative department budgets, which will be presented by the various staff members, and then a board discussion to follow. Previously, we presented you with salary and staffing data that comes from FDOE. We have our surveys throughout the school year, and we are using Survey 3 data. We have, in the last 5 years, sent you that data in form of a memo. Last year, we did present during a workshop, as we are as well today. The administrative staffing, which includes the school board, superintendent, administrators, managers, supervisors of instruction, principals, assistant principals, and so on. In looking at our 2018-19 administrative staffing as a percentage to the total staff increased from 3.5% to 3.6%, while statewide the average increased from 3.9% to 4.0%. Volusia is still below the statewide average by 10%, and 18-19 is the fourth consecutive year that we've remained below the statewide average. In 2014-15, you can see that Volusia was above the statewide average, and in the subsequent year, there were cuts made to administrative staffing. In 2018-19, part of the reason for the increase in that staffing is due to the mental health FEFP allocation that was implemented based on the legislative priorities, and there were positions that included 5 mental health therapists and 2 mental health specialists. We also changed the formula for teachers on assignments at schools based on their FTE enrollment, and we also moved 16 academic coaches from Title I to district funding so that all schools would have a district-funded academic coach. As far as instructional staffing, in our 5-year comparison, you can see that in 2014-15, we exceeded the statewide average, and that has continued, although fluctuated during the years. Last year in 2017-18 was the implementation of school-wide choice and calculation on class size at school-wide averages. And so we did change the staffing formulas when we presented the budget. So that did result in a decrease last year and as well as this year, 2018-19. If you'll remember, in 2017-18, our enrollment was projected higher than it actually came in. So the staffing allocations were a little higher than needed. We did pull back some positions during the school year, but a lot of times once those classes are formed, although the class sizes may be on the smaller side, we don't pull them back as, you know, it could hurt students at that point and disrupts teachers and what they're doing in a classroom. So in 18-19, our enrollment projection was lower than the previous year. And so then you find that a lot of times there are corrections that are made at that point in time from the previous year. And as far as support staffing, this includes all the non-instructional staff, paraprofessionals, administrative support positions, skilled crafts, and unskilled laborers. And again, you can see in 2014-15, where we were at that low point and significantly below the statewide average. There was a reorganization and eliminations in positions that year. We have strategically and as needed, especially in the areas of paraprofessionals where that's driven by student IEPs in most cases. So we have increased those positions strategically and as needed over several years. 2018-19 data also includes the addition of our 49 guardians, so you can see the uptick in that percentage as well. Okay. Yep. Sorry. As far as salary comparisons, when you look at the different administrative categories, it's sometimes difficult to compare them from one district to another. It's self-reported information, but sometimes the titles are different. They may be similar, but you, in smaller districts versus larger districts, have different titles as well as the number of positions. So you may have, for instance, just under principals in a small district, you know, you may have 20 principals versus in our district where you have over 70 principals. And so it could range widely from the experience of the staff as well. And again, sometimes the organization of a district differs from one district to another where they may be, the positions may be compiled differently. What we looked at is our surrounding districts. So we looked at Brevard, Flagler, Lake, Marion, Putnam, and Seminole. And then we also look at our peer districts, which are determined by OPAGA, which is the Office of Program Policy Analysis and Government Accountability, and that's designated by the state. So as I stated, that they collect annually this data from all school districts. This year, our average base pay of approximately 42.8% of VCS administrators ranked below the state average in their areas of classification. And when compared to the surrounding districts, VCS average base pay ranked 4 of 7 or less in 9 of our 14 categories. When compared to our OPAGA peer districts, they ranked 4 of 6 or less in 11 of 14 positions. Looking at instructional salaries, Again, we're comparing surrounding districts, and then we'll look at the peer districts. But you can see that the average salary varies somewhat widely. The Florida average salary, $48,486, which is $2,213 above Volusia's average salary. You can see that in many of our surrounding districts, such as Brevard, Lake, Marion, they're very close to our average salaries and median salaries, within a few $100s of each other. And of course vary based on the average years of experience. Since we have performance pay, our salary schedules go across as teachers receive their performance evaluations, and so it's more difficult to compare between districts. But it's not, we're not moving instructional positions up steps like we used to. They're actually just continuing to add wherever they were on the salary schedule their performance pay each year. But you can see that our staffing, our years of experience is about in the middle of those districts. Then looking at our peer districts, again, there are some fairly wide variations. I know that Sarasota, whenever we look at them, although Opaga compares us to them, they're a wealthier county and their salaries are consistently much higher than ours. But again, you can see that in some of those median salaries that they're within a few $100s of us. Last year, under the surrounding districts, our average salary was 7 of 7, and this year it is 6 of 7. So we did surpass Lake County this year. And again, that's part of our strategic plan, that we are trying to increase our teacher salaries. And this does not include bonuses. These are base salaries. Do you have any questions before we move on to?
Just one question in regard to this slide here, 10. When they say peer districts?
Yes.
Peer in regard to the number of students in each district, or what makes them a peer district?
That's a good question.
Populations are similar.
Yeah, the populations mostly are similar. Also, the area of transportation, the geography, there are a number of things that they look at within those districts.
But not income or wealth of the district.
No, that's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions? So you want to know if we have questions now at all between?
I just thought I'd give you the opportunity to answer questions on this first item before we moved on to the tentative department budgets, if you had any.
Okay. Any questions from the board? No.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Wright.
I have one question. So when we start looking at the staffing, regardless if it's administrative, instructional, or support, those that we surpass the state's average, is there one particular category in the district that has helped elevate that maybe we need to be very clear about? So when you go back to administrative costs and I look at the things that are included, is it that, and I believe guidance counselors, no. So this is managers, supervisors, principals, assistant principals, principal intern. Is it because some of our schools now have 2 assistant principals in the elementary? I mean, do any of that contribute to why we surpass the state's average?
I think that in some cases it is the principals. I did see, a jump in Volusia from as far as high school principals, that they surpassed the statewide average this year. Again, it depends on evaluations for principals as well now, because they're receiving performance pay. They're not just moving on a stepped salary schedule like they used to be. So depending on their rating, if they're highly effective, and where they started, because if you had an experienced principal and then they're receiving performance pay for the last several years and they're highly effective, they're receiving the largest increase.
Okay.
And I would say that that's really again, it depends on how many staff members you have in each category as well. Because if you have, for instance, 3 that would be classified under, say, facilities in one district, and you have a higher, it's an administrative position, but it could be a higher administrative, and then, kind of steps down from there, so 3 different positions. And then you have a larger district that has a wider range. Your averages may look different, and again, based on experience in each district. Ours can change as some of our staff members have retired and have been replaced by less experienced new employees that, that can have an effect on it. So that's why it's really difficult to compare, but I think, last year I shared all of those tables with you, and I can share those with you again if you would like to look at specific categories and districts.
And so I think you gave me more than what I was really asking, because when I look at this based on what you gave us last year, for instance, we added deans at all of our middle schools.
We did.
Which then quite naturally would cause that category to increase. So my question is because we've added deans to all the middle schools, when we see the increase, because quite naturally we know salaries will increase and with performance pay, but as we add various categories such as deans, or making sure we had a guidance counselor at every elementary, middle, and high school, are those the types of items that could have potentially caused us to see a major increase in our staffing that exceeded that of the state average?
Yes, from just total number standpoint,
Yes.
That's the difference in the 0.1% were those mental health positions.
Okay.
So compared to the state, you can see theirs increased as well, but in Volusia, we added those mental health positions, as well as we moved those academic coaches from Title I into the district budget. And so even though they serve the schools, they are budgeted for at a district level.
At a district, okay. That was my question. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Mr. Superintendent, do you want to say that about the deans?
The deans are teachers on assignment.
Yes.
Okay, so they're not
They're
assigned
not.
deans, they're just TOAs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Cuthbert?
I'd be interested to know, and of course this is in the future, as our contracts we're working with a 3-year contract with our staff and a 1-year with AFSCME, correct?
Yes.
Like to know how that will reflect as we go forward, as our staff receive an increase this coming year, if that will help us at all. I think that would be interesting to see if we negotiate it appropriately.
Right, and again, it does depend on what every other district does as well. This month I'll be going to Finance Council, and we always share what our wages increase for each year and where they stand. And, I know there's some districts that when they're reporting, they haven't even finished negotiating where we had. So it's all over, the board. And then you may have a year where a district didn't give much of a raise, and then the following year they do. So, I mean, it's really just kind of a high-level comparison. You really have to dig into the numbers to see, from year to year how the changes affect the numbers. And as far as, retirements, we had all of those retirements when there was the incentive by FRS to retire. So, we can see our workforce, especially with teachers, coming in with less experience versus, our really experienced teachers.
And for the public, could you reiterate how much our teachers received as an increase last year? What they will receive this coming year, and what in the third year?
They received 3% in 2018-19. 2019-20, that hasn't been certified, but based on the contract and the BSA, the base student allocation increase, which was less than 3.5%, teachers would receive 2%, or an average, because again, it's based on performance pay. And then the following year, they would receive 2 or 2.5, and depending again on various factors, we may have to go back and negotiate that that third year.
So it all depends upon our BSA and the funding from the state legislature?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Hayes.
I have one question. On the instructional staffing slide, number 5, since we're exceeding the state, and we've been exceeding them all along, I'd like to know if those excess positions, or I guess I'd like to see a breakdown of how many of those are actually people sitting in that category, but they are not in classrooms. So I'd like to see the percentage of that are individuals that are falling under instructional staffing, but they are actually not in a classroom.
Well, they would all be instructional staff, as in teachers, but they could be media specialists, they could be guidance counselors. They're all the positions that fall under our instructional contract.
Okay, but that includes all TOAs. So we just now learned that includes deans. So deans are not in a classroom because deans are classified as TOAs. That includes the TOAs we've put on campuses to act in a manner of being an administrative TOA. That would also include all TOAs at the district level, correct? So I would just like to see a breakdown on that slide of which of those positions are actually classroom positions versus they're not in a classroom, regardless of what they're doing, whether it be a guidance counselor, a media specialist, a district TOA, a dean, an administrative TOA, or whatever, but they're all following under that because they have the word teacher attached to them.
The TOAs that are at the district level are not included in instructional staffing. They would be included in the other positions because they're funded at a district level.
So where do they fall? In which of these charts?
In the administrative.
Because that's where the deans are right there.
But okay, so deans are falling under administrative also? Or are they falling?
If they're funded at the district level. If they're assigned to a school and they're in the school staffing, then they're included in instructional.
I just find it interesting that we had so many openings last year where we didn't have teachers, and yet we far exceed the staffing in instructional at the state level. So I'm trying to figure out how we exceed it, and yet we had all these openings.
Well, it depends on our staffing formulas. That is what drives the number of positions. So that would mean that our formulas are, I would say, like more generous when we allocate them to the schools versus the statewide average. I don't know what all of the districts use for their formulas, but I know that there were schools that went to school-wide choice a long time ago, several years ago. And so they actually were allocating or calculating their class sizes on school-wide average. And so, their formulas may have been tweaked over the years. I mean, we can certainly get that breakdown, but that is one of the reasons, I believe, because those formulas were brought to the board for discussion before they were changed.
Well, the other thing that I'd like to see is if we're going to use this PowerPoint for any further explanation on the administrative staffing piece, I'd like for it to be spelled out a little bit more that district TOAs are under that category. Because what happens is when you come down to the instructional staffing piece, it just says, and other professional staff, so you're not sure who's falling where.
Well, I don't have the breakdown of all of those positions in front of me, but that's something that is done at a school level and a district level. Technology Services coordinates that when we do the surveys during the school year. So I'm sure that, you know, they have the reporting side of that for a breakdown.
I just want us to be clear when we're describing though, or when the public's gonna read something, that they understand where different positions fall, because I would not have assumed that the TOAs at the district level fell under administrative. I would have thought they fell under the instructional staffing part, under the category of other.
Well, and sometimes that changes. Some of those change from year to year. It's determined by the state and their request for our survey data. So we have to comply with whatever the regulations are at that time. But I can certainly look at that position history and get it from Technology Services. And I guess the other thing to remember too is these are all funds, so there are federal, capital, and general fund positions included in these numbers.
And I understand that, but you did state at one point though that by taking academic coaches out from federal funds, that's what showed the increase here, because now they were being paid for district. So with what you just said, is this encompassing all funds on here or just district funds?
Well, it would encompass all funds, but in the administrative staffing, I think they were assigned to specific schools previously under federal funds. I'd have to verify that, but I can find that out for
Okay,
sure.
but so the academic coaches that are still under federal funds are falling under the instructional staffing on your chart?
I believe so.
Okay.
Well, I'll wait till you finish writing there, Deb.
Okay.
Hard to listen and write and talk at the same time. It is murky because administrator and administrative staffing appears to be two different things.
Okay.
And I don't know if that same definition is applied through every district. So what we call administrative staffing, I wonder if other districts refer to it the same way that we are referring
It's
to
in
it.
the red book, right?
Yeah, I believe that they
It's so
would
defined for us.
refer to it the same way.
The same
It would be
way.
based on the position definitions.
So that normally we would think, as being in the system, those of us who have worked in the system, we would think of people who are represented in the bargaining unit, the teacher bargaining unit, would be people we would think of as instructors. So regardless if they're a TOA or academic coach or whatever their title is, as long as we're being represented by the bargaining unit, we think of them as teachers or instructional people. And then to get to Ms. Haynes' point, I think what we were driving at was how many of those people who are in the bargaining unit, how many of them are actual classroom teachers, and how many of them are other
Right.
than classroom teachers, even though on your chart they may be referred to as administrative staffing.
Right.
You know, it's kind of, yikes, it's
Yeah.
all over the place.
Yeah, there are definitions that we follow when we do classify these positions, and some of it does have to do with the funding and what their actual function is. So I don't want to specifically speak to federal fund, but you know, some of those those Title I schools, for instance, that have funding, that's at a school level. So that's why I believe that they would be included in a school level versus a district level. So, you know, some of it, like I said, is where it's actually funded from, how it's funded, how they're classified. But I can verify that.
Yeah.
I do know that I pulled the actual positions, and that was the difference, was those was the movement of those Title I to the district level academic coaches.
Okay, and can you go back to the superintendent's comment about the definitions that we're using are in the red book? Could you say what the red book is?
Sure. The Red Book is really the basis for financial accounting from the state of Florida. So they update that and revise it every year. But that is where we, how we classify our positions and how our budgets are determined, what functions and what organizations we use throughout the district.
Okay. Thank you. Well, if at some point in time, and I'm not questioning how you have this laid out, but if you could get us that information, perhaps from Human Resources, just an idea of the people that we think of as being in the bargaining unit, how many of them are actually in the classroom as teachers, and how many of those in the bargaining unit are in a position outside of the classroom, let's just say. And that would include a lot of people.
Well, and I can tell you from the staff numbers that are included in here, there are 281 positions that are included as administrative in the district. And then
that are, when you say administrative, they're not administrators.
They're administrative positions
administrative.
classified under DOE data, which this data is pulled strictly from DOE. Okay, we're reporting during a survey, but we report it and upload it to DOE, and then DOE compiles it for the entire state every year. Okay, and then the instructional, we had 4,737 positions, and support was 2,763 positions, for a total of 7,781.
And where would the positions such as an academic coach fall?
Those are under the administrative,
Academic coach.
as they're funded by the district.
Got it.
Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
And we are on now, what, slide 11?
We are, get back to the next area. On slide 11, we are looking at the tentative department budgets, and some of these will be presented by cabinet staff from the various departments. So just kind of revealing our new org chart that has our new logo and the different departments within each division that we have. And the school board is a separate budget. And under this budget for next year, we have added some expenditures that we anticipate based on the superintendent search cost that was discussed. I have a placeholder of $25,000 added to the budget. As well as by state statute, which takes effect July 1st of 2019, I have added I've added contracted services for an internal audit position. This position will report directly to the board, but will audit all the operations of the district.
Okay, and just to clarify on that notion, because I noticed the county of Volusia is doing looks like they are going to hire an internal auditor, which should be the first, an actual person, whereas this is, we're not hiring a person, we're hiring services to conduct this one-time internal audit, or is this something that we're supposed to do every year?
Yes, this is in state statute. It's a new requirement for districts who have revenue over $500 million. And there are some larger districts that already have those positions, but those smaller large districts, such as ourselves, many of them will be adding that for the first time. There is a state contract for these services, and we would like to do that first because we feel that we will get, rather than a person that, you know, if we were to hire, would, instead of from a firm, that they would have more of a rounded staff that could audit the different areas, such as technology, you know, looking at our systems, as well as looking at our instructional and our operations areas. So that will be something that we'll be discussing with you as they proceed to begin audits and what areas, you know, will be audited and so on.
I see. So just to be clear, so we, school districts our size, are all having to do this.
Yes.
And the option would be for the school district to hire a person or to contract out, and that, so we could be contracting out this next fiscal year.
We
right?
will be, yes.
And we will be, and then at a later year, a board could decide, I think we want to hire somebody instead. Is that
Right,
true?
we could, yes, we could hire an internal audit and create that position.
And we can also share cost with, you know, for instance, let's say with Seminole or with
Yeah.
Lake, you know, with these auditing
Ah,
firms. So
That's good.
that's something that will be
Yeah.
presented at a later time
Great,
to you.
great.
Yes.
Question from Ms. Wright?
And not a question, a statement.
Statement.
And it's not just school boards. Any company that's considered a 501c3 or that receives a certain amount of federal funds must have an internal auditor, either a company or individual. But what is the cost of hiring an internal auditor at this point? What is their salary range?
Well, we're anticipating a budget of about $100,000.
Just for their base salary?
Well, this would be a contracted service.
No. I'm
Oh,
saying
for their base-
to hire someone because
It would be about that.
yeah, and that's not including their fringe benefits. Am I correct?
Well, I would anticipate it would be about that same amount. It depends, again, on the experience, and we feel like with contracted service, we could get more experienced staff from a firm that does this on a regular basis.
No, I'm not disagreeing with you because I'm just saying we're looking at this too, several organizations, and they're rather expensive.
Oh,
Their
yes.
salaries are up there, and so I'm saying I agree that we may want to outsource this for a little while.
Yeah.
Because their salaries are starting at about $120.
Yeah, to your point, I was at that mayor's roundtable yesterday, and George Rechtenwald was there. And after the meeting, I asked them about it because I know they are looking to hire 2 top people in the county, a deputy county manager and the internal auditor. And he says, yeah, it's a tough one to find. First, it's a tough one just to find the person, and then,
Right.
of course, you got to pay them. Or her.
They don't
And,
come for free, you know?
Yeah, they don't come for free, and so and since it's a statewide thing that's going on, they're in demand. So
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Ms. Cuthbert, comment?
Thank you, Mr.
Question?
We
Chairman.
could talk later.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is based on a new state statute that has just been passed.
Actually, the statute was passed last year, and there was one piece that took effect last year. The remaining pieces of the statute take effect this July.
Okay, and did they state, and this might be out of your realm, but it's a question that I have kind of in the back of my mind, what are they basing this requirement on? I mean, has there been mismanagement going on to be able to legislate this now?
Well, when the AG is here, that they actually audit our operations at that time, but that's only every 3 years. And this actually encompasses our all of our programs. So it's not just operational, it encompasses our instructional program areas as well.
Because before, the AG would just pick certain programs or departments to investigate.
Yeah, and it's associated with a government transparency statute. That was the whole purpose of that.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's not just public, it's private businesses that receive funding from the government too that have to have the same, have the same requirements.
And that's other educational institutions
Not just
as well.
educational. It's not just educational. That's what I'm saying. Anyone that receives a certain dollar amount, regardless if they're public or private, if they're receiving funding from the federal or the state government, they have to follow the same policy.
Well, then we certainly have in the state of Florida a brand new career choice.
You're right.
It's only under over 500 million though, I believe. So not everybody will be looking to hire, thankfully.
Okay, and obviously, as far as our school board budget, I guess this is called, that was the big item that
Yes,
made that.
those were the two
increase.
two items,
in our
yes.
budget. Thank you.
You're welcome. And under the superintendent's division, these are the areas that encompasses superintendent, the area superintendents, legal services, professional standards, community information and records, and archives management. And you can see here the non-salary budget. The large item to discuss or talk about is the outside legal. And the reason for the reduction there is the proposal to add an additional legal counsel position. And so therefore, some of that outside legal work would not be needed. It would be done internally instead. As well as a request to add a professional standards OS1 to act as a receptionist and answer phone calls and so on as we have outside visitors that often are brought into professional standards, so to kind of manage that whole aspect. We also propose to move 4 positions from technology services to to community information, and those would be 2 public records positions as well as the 2 videographer positions. There's no financial effect as a result of that. And the videographers have been supervised under community information for a couple of years. So we're just really moving the positions and the budget for those. And then one item that we actually haven't addressed yet would be to look at the requirement for the superintendent's salary. And so we will at some point, have to bring forward something on that. But overall in that department, there's, for non-salary, there's an $89,000 decrease.
Okay, before you leave that one, questions on this area? Okay, I don't see any. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, and then Ms. Dana Page Pender will come up and talk about human resources.
Good morning, Chairman Persis, board members.
Good morning.
Superintendent Russell. I just wanted to briefly go over the human resources budget. Overall, you will see a 6.3% reduction. As you can see, we reduced out-of-district travel by $1,000. And I'd want to state up front that does not deal with recruiting. You'll see on the next slide where those dollars are for recruiting. And with printing, a lot of what we do has gone digital, and we've had some in-kind partners that have helped us with printing, so we felt like we could reduce our printing budget a bit. Looking at the next slide, you'll notice that recruitment has been increased by $2,500. We have also received some dollars from Title II, which is bolstering that recruitment budget that helps us get out there with our outreach job fairs and some of our travel to the different job fairs across the state, and actually even outside of the state, recruiting for teachers. You'll notice that there's a jump in administrative performance pay supplements. That amount is due to the increase in +1 administrators receiving dollars, as well as our focus school administrators receiving supplements. So that's why you see the $27,000 increase in that bucket. Unemployment compensation is a decrease of $20,000. We have been steadily whittling away of that over the last few years. So I think it's been a significant increase since about 2015-16. The temporary unassigned is the next bucket that you see a significant increase, and I just wanted to explain that a little bit. Temporary unassigned is an HR budget project that's used to assist schools when a teacher has health issues or is using sick bank leave. And what we do is we move that individual to the HR payroll, so it frees up the position at the school, and the school is able to hire someone while that person is using the sick bank. And then when the person is able to return to the school site, they move off of the HR payroll and they move back into their position at the school. So overall, in our projects, that's a 4.4% decrease in the budget.
What's VESA PSP program?
That is when, it's View Support now, but it's when you have people that are in the View Support Bargaining Unit, or formerly VESA Bargaining Unit, and they go out and they get degrees. It's kind of like it's not really performance pay, but if they were to go out and get a bachelor's degree, there is an extra dollar amount that's associated with it, and that project sits with Human Resources.
And that's allocated by the number of eligible participants, so the budget stays the same, but it's allocated based on the number.
Okay. A question, statement, Ms. Wright.
Re-fingerprinting, is that for volunteers?
No, actually, you'll see two of those. You see View security checks as well as re-fingerprinting non-instructional. So the View security checks is the re-fingerprinting of all of the instructional staff, and it has a different org unit with the state. So the candidates themselves, excuse me, pay for their initial fingerprinting, but every 5 years they have to be re-fingerprinted. In addition, we have to pay rent to the state to house fingerprints. So every year we pay rent, I believe it's $6 a person for everyone in the district, to the state to house the fingerprints, and then every time someone has to be reprinted, we pay for that.
Rent? I don't understand
Ms.
rent.
Cuthbert, go ahead.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
yeah.
Sorry, I don't understand rent. Rent in their database?
Yes.
$6 per person.
It's called rent.
I think it's a scam.
It's called it's called we give you money and this is how we take it back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the recruitment. You only spend $5,000 this year?
We also get donations. We had a lot of donations to help with a lot of things.
Well, let me ask you this. I know you're anticipating it go up a little bit, but do you think that's enough? To do
Actually,
what
from
you-
Title II, we're receiving $20,000, so that will definitely
Okay,
help.
because it
bolster
seemed to
that.
me such a
Yes.
low
Yes.
number. Yeah, okay. Makes me feel a little better. Okay. Good? Everybody good? Okay, we're moving on then? Ms. Bennett? Okay.
I believe we pay.
Thank you.
Financial services?
Financial services. So in financial services, we are continuing our backfill positions for the ERP project and continuing our project management office through fiscal year 20 as we implement that. We do have overall a budget reduction. We're reducing just based on actual numbers looking at the last several years. As well as printing. We had increased that budget to cover printing in the project management office for our ERP trainings. And so most of that is done and we can reduce that, as well as redistributing some of our others, decreasing advertising, which is based on our legal advertisements that we're required to do for our budget. So there's a $2,059 budget reduction, and that is the equivalent of 7.3%.
Questions? Okay, move on.
Thank you.
Okay. And the next one is Operations Division with Mr. Aiken.
Good morning, Mr. Aiken.
Good morning, Chairman Persis, board members, Mr. Russell. So the Operations Division encompasses facility maintenance, purchasing, school safety, school cafe technology, and transportation. So the next slide, we're going to talk about the operations admin, which is my office and my secretary. It's a new change, basically. There are no position requests and no budget change at this time. So
Because I was gonna say, your area only needs $6,000?
that's it.
That's
That's
it.
just me.
Okay, that's good. Okay, that's
All right. So is that good? Yeah.
All right, that's real good.
So the next slide kind of goes over some staffing. It kind of ties back to what Ms. Muller mentioned earlier about support staff. So I want to do a little snapshot here for the board. From 2008 to 2019, we're actually doing more with less right now than we ever have before. Our square footage in our schools currently right now went from approximately 9.4 million square feet to about just over 10 million square feet right now. As a whole, we've actually decreased by 21.6% in the operations staff overall. I'm going to break that down for you so you can look by department. So the next slide, excuse me, next slide. Boy, who's short? Oh, we got to raise this up
I
a
know.
little bit. All right, thank you. So the next slide, we're going to look at technology services, purchasing, warehouse, and school cafe. So technology services from 2008 to 2019, we're still have a decrease of 13% in staff that are currently there today. The 22.6% decrease for purchasing staff currently right now as well. We used to have more buyers and more staff in purchasing. We have not increased that either. And then in Schoolway Cafe, you see one increase there. So that's a 5% increase in Schoolway Cafe staffing during the time frame. And that's actually happened since 2015. We gradually started increasing some staff. So that's the one department that is increasing just slightly based on federal fund, and they're federally funded programs. So, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Yes, ma'am, you have a question there?
I have one.
Question, yes, Ms. Haynes.
So everything that we've seen up to this point has been on a 5-year piece, from 2014 to now. So is there a reason why you went all the way back to 2008 for this part of the presentation? Because if you actually only did a 5-year piece, as we've done for everything up to this point, I mean, we all know that we're not where we were in 2008, okay? But you've taken us back 11 years to therefore then say we're still in a decrease mode.
Yeah, so I can answer that question for you, Ms. Haynes. So in 2008, we had a very viable have some sales tax. We built schools, renovated lots of different things that were there. Square footage was a lot less in 2008 compared to today. We've added so many things over this time frame as well without increasing staff. From new technology, replacing all of our computers. We're trying to get to 1-to-1 by 2020. Schoolway Cafe, we're renovating quite a bit there. So there's many, many more projects over this time frame. And back then we had less square footage, more staff to be able to maintain and sustain better than we are today. 2008, we were reducing our, for example, painting our schools. We're now at every 19 years of painting. Back then we were at 12 years. So we're seeing if we're not adding staff again over this time frame, we are now kick that can down the road. And although we are increasing since 2015, it's not at the pace that our building programs and our other departments are actually increasing their customer service, whether it's computers or providing transportation. So that's why I went back to that time frame, because that was the height of our operation from support staff's standpoint.
Ms. Haynes, you have the floor.
So I hear your explanation and everything, and I also understand you're saying we have more things, but also since then we've closed some schools, we've turned some schools over that have become charter schools, or we sold them and they're vacant, they're no longer property for us. I'm more into painting a realistic picture, and no one is where we were in 2008. So I just, the whole presentation up to this point had been a 5-year span, and now we went back 11 years. Mm-hmm. So I just would have preferred some consistency, I guess, so that we could see the growth. Because we have made growth in the last 5 years since, we're coming out of the recession. And, but instead, it's looking like we're at a deficit across the board. And I give credit to the people that are working in all these areas. the work's getting done. I mean, purchasing's doing a great job, and so is Schoolway Cafe and everything. So that was just my thing, to see it go back 11 years.
Okay, we can move on. Oh, wait, Ms. Cuthbert, sorry.
But when it comes to employees, at what strain? For example, that's 22, that's a 1/5 decrease. In purchasing, what kind of strain is that on our director of purchasing?
Well, she's a coordinator, not a director.
Oh, okay,
so.
I apologize.
Yeah.
The coordinator of purchasing, Ms. Kraft is extremely gifted in her position, but does she, I mean, how many hours is she working? Is she, do you know what I mean? I'm looking at the quality of her day.
Sure. She's very busy with purchasing. She also does warehouse as well. So purchasing is a smaller department compared to warehouse. We transport everything out of there. She puts in the hours just like everybody else does to get the job done. The quality is there. So she does have a good Brian Clem as a number 2 for her in her department, and they work very well together. I don't think and this isn't to say, hey, I need more staff. This is to show a realistic picture of where we were in 2008 during the boom, and then we hit the recession, where we are today, and we are increasing square footage and technology and everything else we're putting in our school systems with less staff to maintain that. That's where we are. And we don't have the funds, and I know that. We don't have the funds to add staff back, nor I think we need to be strategic when we add those back. But I agree, purchasing is doing a great job. With the new ERP, there's more workload for them, for POs, those type of things that'll be coming down the line. So it's gonna be very interesting to see how, as new systems come on board, how we're going to be able to maintain those down the line.
And as much as we are concerned about our instructional staff and our school campus staffs to keep the ball rolling, but that layer that supports them, so they have the ability to do their work and not worry about printing, not worry about the truck arriving on time, that Schoolway Cafe, the kids can be moved in and moved out appropriately. So at what point do we have a signal that they can tell you we're getting to a critical point where we definitely need staff, otherwise there's going to be some kind of breakdown in performance?
And great question. So we do have key performance indicators. I do work with my staff to ensure that their staffing levels meets what their customer needs are, right? Specifically in transportation or Schoolway Cafe, even in facility maintenance. We can look at the workload. How long does it take us to close work orders based on productivity? We have some critical areas. Obviously, HVAC is a critical area for us, because if your air conditioning is not working, we had to have a tech there to get it fixed. So we do look at those, and we do move forward through Mr. Russell to the board, asking for additional positions to be able to move forward.
And the reason why I ask is because we're building schools now.
Yeah, we are.
And Pearson, there was some difficulty in getting certain things ordered in time for a school to be opened. And now we're at another critical time for Chisholm to open. Is there enough with all this additional purchasing, especially with schools, and we're going to have a middle school fairly soon, hopefully. At what rate are we going to make sure that we have the people in place in order to have our schools open in time? Whether it's a new school or even a 50-year-old school like Longstreet.
Yeah, so from a new school opening, there's Ms. Kraft put together a booklet, and that booklet says these are the things that need to be done in a time frame. She laid that out, a time frame, as well as when we start ordering what we need to do. Normally, one of her buyers is assigned specifically that school to review all of those, and she works with other teams to be able to make sure we meet the opening date. And make sure we meet all the mandates along with purchasing and those requirements going down the line. But all of them have lots of projects. It's not like they just do one project. They have multiple projects as they're working through. And I think how she set it up in her department now and how things are being run are very efficient and very effective in what we're doing today. Time will tell based on, as we add more things and what we need to do. We'll be coming forward with adding positions if need be based on, our historical review of what's needed.
Okay, thank you.
Per department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions on this one? Go ahead, Mr. Aiken.
All right, so the next slide talks about, and again, it goes back to 2008, but it looks at maintenance and transportation. Transportation decreased by 22%, and there's a reason for that. So back in 2008, we transported about 27,000 students daily. About 2,000 of those were courtesy busing students, which we didn't receive any funding for. During 2008, we declined, so therefore we reduced to operators and attendants, and today we transport just those students that are eligible for transportation outside a 2-mile walk zone. So we're still down below most of those as operators and attendants, but I think our mechanics and mechanic helpers are where we are. We do have a couple of positions in transportation back in 2008 that we deleted. One would be an area manager and a shop manager. And like Ms. Cuthbert mentioned a question before, it's time for us to start bringing some of those back based on the workload that we currently have. Maintenance, this ties directly to our PM maintenance and maintaining our schools, and as our square footage gets larger, we need staff to be able to maintain all of that as well. So in the maintenance department, we're still down from 2008 to now 27%, although we have increased slightly since 2015 to date.
Yes, Mr. Russell.
I would like to point out that we're continually advertising for skilled labor. You know, it's just, we're just competing, you know, with industry out there. So we'll continue to do that. And I know we're starting with painters this year. We wanted to increase to 6. We're doing 3, but every time there's a need for HVAC, carpentry, plumbing, you know, I just sign off on it. We do not wait. But it's just very hard to find them. We're even willing to bring back, on a part-time basis, retirees, if they can do that type of work for us.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, very good point Mr. Russell mentioned there, and that's in the other fields as well. We're critical, especially with an economy like it is today, getting the skilled workers that we need to bring them on board to maintain a full staffing.
Understood.
Okay.
Yes.
The next slide goes over design and construction, planning and business services and building inspections, and obviously it goes back from 2008 to date. In January of this year, we actually, what I did was I reorged just a little bit with the facility maintenance department, and I removed 2 functions out of the facility director's responsibility. One of those was new construction, and that was moved over to Ms. Sarah Lee Morrissey to oversee. And then the other one was our building inspections, our permitting department, and that falls directly underneath me. Several reasons for that. We want to make sure that it's very transparent. They report directly to me. They find something, we can resolve the issue. Therefore, nobody can say, you know, we're doing things not right. Sarah Lee Morrissey does a great job from design, from planning and businesses, and having her take on Mr. Brown and his team on design and construction just makes sense. It's a big picture. We're moving forward with that. You can see an 18% decrease in the construction staffing. I think we've added some of those over the last few years because of the house and sales tax. And as we start building schools, Pearson now, you know, we're doing Chisholm now. We're looking at the other schools going there. You're going to see an increase in needing project managers down the line. Same with building inspection as well. As we have more projects out there, we're going to need qualified building inspectors to be able to go out and inspect the work to make sure we can sign off on that and get those projects done. So the 7.6% decrease in planning and business as well. So she has actually shrunk over that time frame and kind of maintained where we're at now. And we had a 25% decrease in building inspection staff. So from the building era to today, and we're starting to get back into it.
Sure. Well, it certainly stands to reason as we are building more and doing more, we would need more people to help oversee those projects and do those things. Are you saying that those project managers that we would likely need to hire, additional ones, that they'd be paid for out of the half-cent sales tax?
Well, or capital, so it would be out of capital. So it depends on what we're actually doing, and I think Sarah Lee or Tom Brown. So I mean, if they want to
I saw
chip
Deb
in on that, I think it's, you
nod
know,
her
it's going to be
head.
out of capital. This capital funds, so we were expending capital funds out of that, so.
Okay.
For those
Well,
project managers.
Yes, and am I seeing a nod back there? Yes, a nod. Okay, good. Just wanted to make sure. Miss Cuthbert, yes.
And if the board decides to bond, would this accelerate this need? I'm sure it would, correct?
The answer is yes, it would. So as we add larger projects, for example, 3 schools or 2 schools, we would need to do that as well.
Ms. Morrissey is approaching here. It's just
Good evening, or, sorry.
Afternoon.
Good morning.
Good morning.
morning, still morning.
Sorry
Still
about that.
morning. Come on, Mr. Aiken, come on.
Sarah Lee Morrissey, Planning Director. I just wanted to clarify, and Mr. Aiken has a slide coming up. We're still working on a capital budget based on the feedback we got from the board on Thursday, and are in the process of evaluating potential impact on staffing. So we don't, on a slide you'll see shortly, it's based on pay-as-you-go. It's based on how we've been. And depending on what ultimately the board does with capital budget would determine whether or not we come forward with any additional staffing requests.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Wright has a comment.
Mr. Akins, what are the 2 areas you moved around, or the 2 positions again?
Yeah, so what I did was, in January, I took the new construction and moved the responsibilities over to Ms. Sarah Lee Morrissey to oversee. And then the permitting department fell underneath me directly instead of the facility director's position. Because right now we have an interim director. So I removed those 2 out for us. And when you start looking at it from a responsibility standpoint, it makes sense to kind of keep it that way and let the facility director concentrate on facilities maintenance and operations.
And so for the permitting, though, that is for the new construction, is that correct?
So that's for any construction, anything
Okay.
that goes on any one of our campuses, whether it's a small project to a large schools. They do the permitting. We also do Chip Johnson. He actually does all of the plans review and signs on off all of those. And they're all certified. They're certified building inspectors.
Okay. And
I'd just like to clarify.
Sarah Lee again.
I'm sorry, but just to clarify, Mr. Johnson, he's our chief building official.
okay.
We don't utilize the cities for the purposes of building permitting, but there is a pretty significant aspect of permitting where we're dealing with outside agencies like the Water Management District or DEP, anything involving water or sewer extensions or connections where we're working with a local government, that would come under our planning and construction divisions.
Okay.
Just
Well,
wanted to clarify that.
okay, because that was you kind of answered at the beginning, because my question was, if this planning and permitting position was for new construction, why didn't it fall under new construction? But you're saying it's for anything that we do. So if we have an AV, HVAC at
Yes.
West Side, it would fall for the permitting. Okay. No, so he answered. That was my question. Okay.
Yeah, it could be a room utilization change. He would be looking at that from a planning standpoint.
Okay, I think we can move on.
All right, so the next slide talks about facility maintenance, and you can see we've moved around some monies and deleted some at different locations. Mr. Russell alluded to this. We're requesting to add 3 painters. Right now, we have 8 total. We want to add 3. We're going to go 7 painters, excuse me. We want to go to 10, so we'll have 5 on the east side, 5 on the west side. That's so we can start bringing back and start painting some of the schools' interior and doorways and frames by ourselves, and hopefully pick that pace back up. The next one is every 3 years we're required to do a radon testing on our campuses or district-wide. That's $140,000 that we didn't include in this budget, but that's something we're going to have to look at and move in that direction. That's mandated for us to be able to do that.
State mandate,
So we're
another one.
required.
And that one just came forward, so that's why the budget wasn't adjusted at this point.
Thank you.
Right. And then we have a $42,688 budget reduction, which is a 0.01 reduction in the budget for facility maintenance this year. So,
Greg, can you explain how maintenance and repairs could go down?
yeah, so I'm going to bring Ron Young up and let him explain, because he's the one that was the intricate part of that. So, Mr. Young?
Before he comes up, can I ask him a question?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Great. Before
We did reduce it slightly.
Before we start, so in
Why did we
effect,
reduce that?
if we add the 140, we really won't have a reduction at all, correct?
Well, we're looking to see if we have the funds outside. If not, we're going to have to find it in here within our budget to be able to do that. So that reduction would not be, you're correct. So we wouldn't have the 0.01 reduction based on that. We did right here.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
It's right
And
here.
Ms. Haynes, you have a question? Yes.
So why did your cell phone bill go up by $20,000?
Yeah, and you're going to see our cell phone goes up in every one of the departments. And so as we go through, we add a few more staff members, and then the cost, obviously, I think is going up a little bit on those.
So do you issue cell phones to everyone in that department?
So they have what they call it's like a flip phone. Go ahead, you can answer that.
Well,
Ron Young.
Ron Young,
Young.
Interim Director of Facilities Maintenance and Operations. We asked for that increase because several years ago, the board wanted us to put GPSs on our vans, our trucks. So that is the increase that we asked for that.
Using our Verizon.
Right.
Right, okay. Plus additional cell phone usage.
Okay, and
We're going to answer one question. I think Ms. Wright had that question about why did we reduce
Yes.
maintenance and repairs? Why did it reduce?
No, Chairman, first is
Mr.
asking.
Oh, I'm sorry.
it,
I knew somebody did.
it doesn't matter who asked the question.
Somebody
we just,
asked
we just want an answer. That's
I knew
all.
somebody asked it.
Yeah.
All right.
I honestly don't remember asking for a decrease. I asked for a $2 million increase.
Well, that would sound a little more logical.
Well, one thing to point out is these aren't the projects. Some of the expenditures are included in projects, and so we'll be presenting that in our next update.
So when we look at the budget, we look at how much they've expended to date. When we start doing these reviews, it looks like he's not going to spend the $1.8 million this year. So that's why we reduced it by $125,000. So overall, in that string line is why it was there. But specifically, like Deb mentioned a few minutes ago, there are some other areas that we need to increase. One of those would be looking at carpets and carpet replacements. And you're going to see that's separate out of this budget line.
Ms. Cuthbert, and then Ms. Wright, and then I have a question. So go ahead, Ms. Cuthbert.
I have several. Just to clarify, I see there's a 74,500 increase in dues and fees.
Training.
Training.
We have a huge training gap. Chillers, for example, we have a huge training gap there that we're trying to fill, and Mr. Brown is working with us on that. Those classes are about $6,000 to $9,000 per class. So we're installing more and more and more chillers. So we need to fill that gap with the training our people.
That's very well. That's realistic. Yes.
Before you move
professional
on, but with
development.
that, so when we get these new chillers and ACs installed, we do not have an agreement where that becomes part of our purchase price for training?
We do. So we do. We also have a warranty on some of the chillers, but you got to understand our guys still have to go out there and try to repair it before. It could take an hour or two before somebody gets here from that company to be able to do what they need to do.
No. That was not the question. The question is,
The answer is yes.
When we partner with, when we purchase, do we not require them to train our people?
They
to
train
repair?
staff. We do. Tom Brown is the one that installs those, and his staff do go through certification process and some training. Do we train all of our staff? The answer is no during that process. So we don't bring all of our HVAC guys in to get trained all at the same time.
I believe what you're talking about is startup training, and they do have that, do provide that at the school. But what we're talking about is in-depth, break it down, troubleshooting, and we can't do that at a school, obviously.
Okay.
So it's more in-depth training
Okay.
that we're asking for.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Cuthbert.
Where is the emergency repair budget?
Yeah, there isn't one.
Just for example, if a high school's chillers go down, where would that be? Because that's very expensive.
I tell you what we do. If, let's say there's $1 million budget, we would take 200,000 and we don't show it to our people. You will see it, obviously, but we kind of take it and put it in our back pocket and hold on to it to go throughout the year. And if we have to pull that out, then that's what we do.
And that's used for emergencies. So we kind of we keep some back in case there's an emergency pops up, which they always do.
Oh, yes.
And then you have those funds available, so we don't have to. We try to stay within budget, if not under budget, every year.
Because I know not too long ago, we had one at Ormond. Chiller went out, and that was an emergency repair, and now we have another one.
We will.
And
You'll
I
hear that
understand
tonight.
the wear and tear. I was just making sure we have enough in our budget to take care of, especially as our other chillers are getting older and older.
We show, in our staff meetings, we show checkbooks, and what those checkbooks are, it's a dial that has the budget and the expense, and the dial shows where we are on the expense side. But what we do is we take 200, if it's $1 million budget, we'll show it on the dial as 800,000. So the guys, we're trying to not overspend, but also to hold some money in reserve for those emergencies.
Oh, I know about, you conserve as much as you can, but it's also, emergencies will come up, the wear and tear,
sure.
the wind, hurricanes. I was just making sure that you have a budget from which to pull, so it doesn't come out of our general funds. So just double
Yeah, so
check.
some of it would be capital, for example, if that went out, it would be a capital expense, we'd have to go back and look at the capital funds that we would have. And
Yeah, this
and
is
we do
actually
some.
general,
This is general here, though.
but yeah, some of the projects would be capital.
Right.
And what you're talking about is emergency funds for repair.
Yes, sir.
But emergency funds for replacement would be capital.
Yeah. But
Gotcha.
repair would be us, and yes, he would have that kind of set in here and what we need to do. So if it's a major replacement, then we shift it over to capital, and Tom Brown's crew would actually take care of that HVAC system.
Gotcha. Thank you for that clarification.
Ms. Wright?
Too quick. So I do agree with Ms. Cuthbert. I really think we should have a line item for emergencies. That's just my opinion. My next thing I wanted to ask, when you talked about, it goes back to the maintenance and the repairs, how we started on here. So when you said some things are being identified elsewhere, where else would it be identified? Is it because it's a new project? So when we talked about maintenance, you were saying some of the line items.
So that was Deb
She's
mentioned
talking about
that.
capital
And so,
replacements.
right.
Okay.
Right, there's some, when they do a project to replace some of those items, and they would actually fall under capital versus just a repair of something which would fall under maintenance. I was just making sure we were, because I think that Mrs. Cuthbert had mentioned using general funds, and this maintenance budget is general fund, so I just want to make that difference.
No, not Ms. Cuthbert. When Chair Persis asked about the decrease. So I was trying to understand, how do we have a decrease when we have so many schools that need repair, plus we have new ones coming online? So I understand the new ones would come from the half cent and capital. But the ones where we see this decrease, how do you justify having a decrease when we have so many issues?
That's what I said. I don't remember asking for a decrease.
Right.
And then what I said was I had asked for a $2 million increase.
Correct.
But most of that was for capital replacements, and that's what Ms. Mueller
So
was
it's for
talking about.
replacements. And so anything dealing with replacements will not come from here.
Right, but I was actually, now I know what you're saying. I was referring to projects, and those aren't capital projects, though. I was talking about when when Ms. Paige Pender was up here, and certain things we account for in a certain, we give it a project number so that we can specifically track those expenditures. So some of their budgets are considered projects, and those we will bring forward in the next budget presentation.
Okay.
So it's not specifically to a department, it's tracked as a project.
Right, and so just give me an example. Give us an example. I know we're going to touch on it a little bit. Just give me one example, because I'm not
I can
following.
give you several.
Sure, go ahead.
I'll give you several. Carpet replacements, that's capital. In the turn down, there were several schools that we replaced a wing of air conditioning, but not the whole campus. So I asked for funding to go back and hit those other wings. But there's a tremendous amount of carpeting out there, flooring that needs to be replaced.
So flooring would be considered a project.
That's
Capital
correct.
money.
Capital
Okay.
money.
And see, that's why I asked for clarification, because see, I would consider a project maybe being a school, or just say this building would be considered work as a project, not carpet for the entire district. Okay.
Yeah, individuals.
I have one more.
Yeah, Ms. Cuthbert.
Thank you,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. I have a question, and I know this was on our budget last year, and you know I've requested trees to be trimmed.
They're being trimmed right now, by the way.
But I also know if there's certain height we have to use.
A bucket truck.
Yeah,
Or
a
lift.
different truck. Is that included under rental? We have rental equipment. You've reduced it by 1,000, so we have to rent that particular equipment.
Yes, we do have to rent. We can probably go to about 45 feet, but we have instances where we have to go to 90 feet. So yes, we do rent bucket trucks. And, but we did also purchase a scissor lift, so they probably reduced it because we don't rent that piece anymore.
Okay, so it's well invested. Okay, thank you.
Well, getting back to my original question, remember that one about 10
Yeah,
minutes ago,
maintenance and
15
repairs.
minutes ago?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know, it just reminds me of that, that old British saying, penny wise, pound foolish. When we get down to this maintenance thing, I mean, I wouldn't want to see us maintain something, and then because we haven't maintained it, it breaks down, and now we have to replace it for a lot more money than if we could have just maintained it properly throughout its cycle. So it still bothers me that maintenance materials kind of remains flat, but the maintenance repairs is down $125,000. It just doesn't seem to be logical with all of the facilities and all of the equipment that is obviously aging. Why would we anticipate that we would have to spend less money than the previous year? I still haven't received a good explanation.
So we've looked at the last several years and how much we've budgeted in that string line account for maintenance and repairs. And
Right.
so if we look at and we haven't spent it, for example, fuel and transportation, you're going to see a reduction there as well because we know how many miles we go, we know how much fuel basically costs. We try to throw that dart and hit that number. But if our miles reduce, we can reduce the amount we need for that. Same thing here. When we're looking at maintenance and repairs, we're looking at what we spent, actual expenditures over time. So we looked at last year, the year before, where are we at? Are we under budget? Are we on budget? Are we over budget? We've been under budget the last couple of years, so therefore it's time for us to reduce it again so we can be more accurate in what we're asking for, because that $125,000 can go to somebody, the department that needs it for an increase. So these are all general funds. So this is historical data that we're reviewing it on to say.
I hear you. Are you saying, though, that we only spent this year $101,760,000?
We're just shy of that. We haven't quite finished up this year yet because we still have June to go, right? We still just finished our May expenditures. We're doing June currently now.
I think one thing we need to understand is that we've been down about 20 positions all year, and we are fast approaching 30 positions. So that could account for, not spending our budget or not spending over our budget. So
Well, that's true.
that's
For
significant.
projects as well.
When we're talking 4 hubs, you're talking 6 people out of a hub. That's significant.
Well, then,
And it's staff.
But to the superintendent's point, we have had trouble in staffing.
I think we all understand that it's hard to find the people. So I guess maybe you could answer or help me feel better if you said this. If there is a repair that needs to be made, we do it, right?
Yes.
We don't say, oh, we can't do it because we don't have the money.
That's correct.
So the money comes from somewhere. I mean,
It's like the conversation I used to have with Bernie upstairs when we were getting close at the end of the year. I would say, Bernie, we're running out of money. And he would say, Ron, I'm never going to let you not fix something that's
Something.
broken.
okay. Ms. Haynes.
So, going along the same lines as what Mr. Persis has been talking about, do we have someone on your staff, or maybe there's 2 people on your staff, that they're responsible for evaluating the school settings and the HVAC systems and all that to make sure? Because we all got an email where we now have an emergency project that's been thrown at us that we've now got to, fix immediately. And trust me, I don't want anybody without air conditioning, because I would not survive without
I
air
don't either.
conditioning. Okay, but my concern is, and I'm not saying that this is what happened at this site, but are we doing due diligence to make sure that our equipment is being kept up and running, or keeping an eye on it and knowing that, we need to schedule it? Because the last thing we want to see, and I know sometimes it's just an emergency, but we don't want to just see that we're being reactive instead of proactive. And so
Absolutely.
do we have a proactive plan, which then would lead into your maintenance and repairs, versus are we only always being reactive?
No, absolutely. When I took over maintenance as the assistant director, we had less than 7% of our work orders were proactive work orders. We were totally reactive. And by the way, that was back in 2008. So we set a goal to be 75% proactive. Now, we have not reached that goal, but we are at just over 50%. So we have made significant strides. We do evaluate mechanical systems, HVAC. We do evaluate them. We have a very large spreadsheet of predictive failures. And Tom has been working on trying to replace some of those systems. We have a spreadsheet on portables. So many years, probably every 5 years, we go around and evaluate the portables. And then what we do is we line them up in a triage fashion, and we pick out 5 years worth of work out of those portables. Whichever portables, whichever sites bubble to the top. So we take care of that 5 years worth of work. And when we get close to finishing that 5 years worth of work, we evaluate them again. Same with painting, same with, you name it. We carpet, for example, flooring. We grade just about everything. We're in the middle of the painting right now, evaluating the painting again right now.
So the answer to your question is yes, we review it. We do have staff that monitor the budget as we go through. We also manage, what the project or maintenance repair would be for that project, and then find out where we are on that scale, like you mentioned earlier. So we continue to make sure we're doing what we need to do. One thing he didn't mention was our PM maintenance and the new focus over the last 6 months that Ron and I have been talking about, is going back and looking at the PM maintenance, the manufacturer's recommendation. What is that? Are we meeting that recommendation based on that piece of equipment, whatever it is? And then making sure that the staff that go out and maintain that equipment that we have, we're talking about now doing a QA. So now the hub supervisor, somebody comes behind it to make sure it was done properly and everything was completed in accordance with what the manufacturer's recommendations were. So that you're going to see continuous improvement in those areas. And so you're going to see, hopefully, longevity, cradle to grave, a little bit better. We're trying to expand the life cycle of our products.
To Mr. Persis' point, and Greg's, in November, we went back and we looked at our PMs, and we were completing about 74% of 600. In other words, 600 PMs are issued, we were completing 74% of them. Today, we're issuing 1,000 PMs, and we're completing, I believe it was 84 or 86% of them.
86%.
So we have had a renewed focus in that area.
That's great. Good to hear. Ms. Cuthbert, then Ms. Haynes?
She can finish.
I'm not sure which one is Ty.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
finish one?
Yeah, she needs to finish.
Yes,
Okay.
Ms. Haynes.
So one final question I have for you is about the chillers. Do we have evidence that the chillers are actually working better than what we use? Than what we used to use if we had invested in that version of air conditioning being new versus the chiller system. I personally am not a huge fan of the chiller system, and part of it's because when we live in Florida, and if you think about the fact that it's like putting water up and bringing water back in, and the water's supposed to cool down. Well, when it's 100 degrees outside, So
Yeah, I'm
I
glad
want
you
the
asked.
honest
It's doing a
truth.
good job in here today.
I am very glad you asked, because we have a meeting coming up between maintenance and new construction, looking specifically at that. Are chillers more financially benefiting us in maintaining, or do we go back to individual units for replacements? And so that's a huge discussion that we're going to be having, and we'll be looking at that, which one's the best moving forward. But we've had chillers, and I'll let you jump in, but we've had chillers out there as well, so.
She's ready for this.
I know.
No, my honest answer
I
is.
know when you first started installing chillers.
Right.
And trust me, I've talked to people about how they work or don't work.
And you're right, the water temperature is going to, makes a huge difference as it's coming back in for that chiller plant, so, for the chiller to be
Yeah,
able to cool.
we
Right.
run the water out.
Sure. Try to
It's
cool it.
100 degrees outside. We run that water back in, and it's supposed to cool, and I'm like, that might work in the summertime, or, like a midline state like Tennessee or something. Now, granted, in Minnesota, they're going to be frozen all the time as we're pumping
So they need
water,
the heat systems.
Yeah.
Chiller means another thing in Minnesota.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
10, 15 years ago, chillers were much more efficient than individual units or DX units. DX units have caught up to chillers. Having said that, I believe that there's a place for both. There are large occupancy buildings that we should have on chillers, and there are other buildings that we probably should have on splits. Our concern is, and we've been talking about this internally, what to do going forward. We don't have the answer yet, but we are talking about it. My concern with chillers is when we lose a chiller, it's a national emergency.
It is.
Yeah, because nobody has air, right? So the stress level goes up quickly. So sure, it's easier sometimes when we have split systems, but I'm not sure that is the answer. I believe that the answer is a combination of the two.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
That's fair.
Thank you. Ms. Cuthbert.
Okay, and this is of future maintenance. As we are replacing our schools, Pearson is beautiful. Lime green walls, tile outside, and those beautiful windows. Are we going to be washing those windows at minimum once a year? Because I saw them being washed before school opened last year. School year is over. One of the worst things we can do is, in that sun, bake all those streaks, and there goes our windows. Same thing with Chisholm, 2-story classroom building. Will those upstairs windows still be pristine? And as we do tilt wall, the cement, you can see the cement on the front of DAC. There are black streaks coming down, and it ages the building. Will we be able to pressure wash at least have those schools, and if we don't paint for 19 years, they're going to look pretty sad in our weather this long.
So it goes back to 2008. I'm gonna let you jump in here in a second, but let me just
I'm
kind of
really
help you out here
concerned
just a little bit. So,
because-
so ABM actually, part of the contract is to kind of clean some of the windows, but if they're too high, then it kind of falls back on. So there's a hybrid that we kind of have to look at for the windows and how we can clean. But I know Osteen's one currently right now, right? So they're 2-story as well, and they've been cleaning those as well. As far as pressure wash, we used to have internal staff do a lot of pressure washing. Those are the staff that were reduced since 2008 to today. We're not bringing them back. It's part of our contract with ABM to do the pressure washing. Problem is we don't have enough money in the ABM contract or dictate in there, the amount of pressure washing that we may want to be able to get everything done. Not talking about cleaning gutters and doing some of those things. They do have minor projects that they go out and do, pressure washing or cleaning and cleaning the concrete as we go through with that. So a new product ABM is using that's actually mold. It's mold removal. I don't know what it's called, the exact name. We're testing it at Atlantic High School. And matter of fact, they just did their first application last week, right after school ended. So it was last week. It's supposed to last a lot longer than just coming out and pressure spraying. Because if you pressure spray your buildings long enough, you ruin the building finish and everything else. We got to look at the painting, the removal of that and what we can do, what chemicals we can use to get that done. So, but from a maintenance standpoint, I'm gonna let you talk about the maintenance and how you look at for the pressure washing that you guys do?
Yes, the windows, Citrus Grove is another one where we have window issues. I would prefer to see that added to the custodial contract. There are a lot of applications now that you can use that you don't need bucket trucks. You can do it from the ground. I mean, we see them all the time on TV, right? But seriously, there are a lot of applications now that we can do from the ground. We don't need bucket trucks. So I would like to see that added to the ABM contract. Pressure washing, I'm not a fan. You know, in the principal meetings that I've had recently, 449 items from the principals, by the way. But anyway, a lot of those items were, they wanted pressure washing. Well, the problem with pressure washing is it blows out expansion joints and it just creates all kinds of problems if you do it too often. So we do have a product that we spray on. It's called Wet and Forget. We've probably done 15 to 20 campuses in the last 6 months with Wet and Forget. It is an expensive product.
Wet and Forget.
Wet and Forget.
Yeah. It's a product you spray on and you just leave it so it looks horrible and eventually it just goes back to normal.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the maintenance piece. You pressure wash too much, it's going to ruin your exterior.
Yes, so we have done it's an expensive product. We are looking at another product, but I think it's more expensive. But when you weigh pressure washing, the man hours involved in pressure washing versus Wet and Forget, you can Wet and Forget a campus a lot faster than you can pressure wash a campus. So when you weigh the man-hour cost of pressure washing versus spraying with Wet and Forget, I think the Wet and Forget comes out much cheaper, and it lasts. It's not an instant gratification product, so when they come and say, hey, we sprayed your campus, you're like, no, you didn't. Well, yes, we did, but it takes a little while for the microorganisms to eat the mold. Right. But yeah, so that's a direction that I would prefer to go instead of all the pressure washing.
Right. So now pressure washing, the concrete is a little bit different. So we're talking about a building, right? We're talking about concrete. Now, I agree with concrete clean because that's what you're going to have to do there, pressure wash. Can use some of the chemicals, but you got to kind of keep some of that areas clean. But the building we have to be careful of.
I'm just very concerned about the half-cent sales tax money that we use to build our new schools, and they look so gorgeous. And our people are just doing such a fantastic job. I would like to make it last as long as possible.
We do too.
Especially with, Chisholm is being painted. How often do we have to paint those waves? Is there a lacquer or something, a finish you have to put on it to seal it? I'm just very concerned that as we have our students looking out these windows, especially Pearson, Florida ceiling windows are beautiful in their common areas. And that you look out into the courtyard, let's maintain that look.
I will tell you that we are totally reactive in that area. We do not have a proactive program for that. Would love to have a couple of guys in the environmental department and put them on a cycle to do that, but currently we do not.
Okay, and if we allow ABM to do that or a custodial contract, I don't think I would trust them. I don't trust them enough to empty our garbage cans right now and clean our carpeted floors, let alone make sure they do all of that. So then we have a problem. Thank you.
All right.
So could you point out then where in this budget would like that Wet and Forget and pressure cleaning the driveways, sidewalks?
Just part of the big maintenance number.
Maintenance materials, so when you get into materials, that's where you buy it out of, probably here. So it comes out of there, so we buy it. And ABM's using it too, because they're required to do some of it, so they're using, I don't know whether it's called Wet and Forget, but they have another product that they're using as well. I'll let you know how Atlantic High School turns out fairly soon.
Yes, thank you. Very interested.
And right now, Greg, did you say the pressure cleaning of the sidewalks around the schools, the concrete areas, that is, who performs that service?
ABM does.
We
performs
did
those.
test. We did test the Wet and Forget on the dog bowl last year, and it did do very well. Yes.
But ABM is doing that. Actually, through Mr. Russell, he asked me to make sure that I reached out to ABM to make sure they start the pressure washing earlier and don't wait till a week or two before school starts. So they need to do sections Larger campuses, obviously, by the time they get done, it'll probably be right at the beginning of the year. First part may need to be pressure washed again, but at least we'll have them all done prior to school starting. So that's a directive, or not a directive, but a communication I had with ABM, put it that way.
Okay, yes, Ms. Cuthbert.
With ABM, are they going to do full-time? Or are they to 28 hours a week?
So, we're kind of way off track here, but that's okay. So I actually asked Mr. Clark and ABM, Todd Hoover, about their summer hours. He said their leads will stay 410s. Then their other staff that normally work 8-hour days are going to work 7.5-hour days. A half hour will be lunch. And then their part-time goes from down to, I think it's 3 hours or 3.5 hours is what they have. And they've been doing that the last couple of years. Went back and looked, and they have been. So it's the same process they're doing in the last several years that they're doing this year.
Okay, thank you.
And they'll do project cleans and everything else as they get closer. I think you're going to see those hours increase. I think they're just trying to work through at this point in time where they're
Thanks.
at.
Okay, we can move on. Go ahead.
All right, so that's facility maintenance. I'm glad that one's done. I got 17 more departments to go. Just joking, I don't have that many.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Thank you.
I think we're really expending a lot of money on the chillers right now.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Well, somebody said it was too hot. I'm just not going to say who it was. So facility design.
So before we get going,
construction, and-
let's just take a break, okay? We've been at it an
Great.
hour and a
Wonderful.
half. So.
Perfect time to take a break.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we are back from our break, and we are continuing with the presentation with Mr. Aiken. You're leading the way. And
So now we're at facilities, design, construction, and inspection. So going along, this is a $9,233 budget increase. It's a 13.8% budget increase overall. The budget is based on pay-as-you-go. Sarah Lee mentioned that a few minutes ago. We may have to, we may require us to adjust if bonds occurs later down the line. But as you can see, cell phones, we do have more staff there, and like I mentioned earlier, she did pick up new construction there, and then we're actually looking at software, and that $6,233 is for AIA licenses and Blue Beam, and Blue Beam. Yeah, I heard somebody behind me. It's kind of one of those. There you go, Blue Beam. So any questions there?
no questions. Let's go.
All right, so next one. So we have, this is planning and business services. You can see here we were requesting to add a choice specialist position. Currently right now, Marion Ridgway is the one that does choice, and she's real estate. Thank you. Jeez, I knew it was something. It was real estate that she does, and we need to get her back on the real estate piece, and we need to be focused back on choice, especially with all the new stuff down the line. In the budget that you can see on printing, we reduced that by $1,000, but we did increase $13,000 under professional and technical services. Currently, right now, we have a CPA firm that actually is looking at Galaxy HVAC project right now, looking at that project from a budgetary standpoint. What we would like to do here is from financial provisions moving forward, having that firm, that audit firm, that CPA audit our labor general and the cost of work and a lot of our contracts that we have right now that we use. So we're hoping to move in that direction, including the subcontractor bonds, profits, overhead for subcontractors, and looking at the contract that we utilize with our major projects and see if there's areas where we can improve and save money down the line.
Okay. Questions?
I just have one.
Ms. Wright.
So everything that, where you all have like add the painter, add, why didn't you just add it in the budget?
This is non-salary. The budgets here are all non-salary. The positions are salary, so they're not included in that budget.
Okay, move on.
Okay, next one is purchasing a warehouse. We are requesting from a position standpoint, reclassify my purchasing coordinator to director based on many different factors, and that's about a $15,000 increase. We are reducing the budget by $3,300, and it's a 6.9% reduction overall, and it's under maintenance and repair.
Questions? None. Move on.
All right, the next one is safety and security. This one if you remember last year, we brought this department online. We were unsure on what type of funding the state was going to do. When we went back with the Guardian, we came out with a Guardian program. So some of the specialized tactical attire for Guardians is now we can get that through the Sheriff's Department through a grant. And so we reduced the budget here significantly. So we reduced it by $10,000 decrease, which is a 66.6% decrease. What we are going to request this year is to increase my lead guardian from 185 to 250 day based on what we've seen this year, the success. We need the lead guardian actually handles many different things for the district, including making sure all of our guardians' weapons are inspected, visits with schools, make sure everything's in line there. We're also looking at increasing the number of guardians by 8. We need to staff 4 additional middle schools, and in any high school that has over additional 1,000 from the SRD, we would want to add additional guardian there for additional security measures. Mr. Russell.
And that's really not an addition. It's because, remember, we are reducing SRDs.
Oh, right.
And so it should be almost cost neutral, I would believe.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Safe School funds, based on this, Deb and I have worked on this. It looks like we're working on the contracts right now for SRDs and SROs. We're asking for a 50-50 split, as you mentioned. I mentioned that in the last board meeting. And then with the Safe School funding should offset, we should be neutral here. So we shouldn't see any increase to the general fund.
Yeah, we'll bring that forward because, you know, we've received an increase in our allocation for next year in Safe Schools. And as Mr. Aiken said, we're trying to negotiate with the cities, and moving from SROs to guardians will be a savings as well. So we're working on those numbers, and that's something that we'll bring forward to you as well.
So just looking at this budget, I mean, it seems so odd. This is safety and security. In the school district, it looks like we have a $5,000 budget for it. But is that's because all the money
Categorical, so Safe
is
Schools funding,
categorical,
which
all
will,
safe
I think.
school funding.
Right.
So this is just money that could not come out of Safe School? Is that what it is?
That's correct. This is actually part of an unfunded mandate piece of Safe
Right.
Schools, because we also have our school safety specialist position and that secretary. And we already had the school safety coordinator.
You're talking about school safety specialist?
Rosalind.
Oh, Rosalind, she's an analyst.
But she was already, we already had that position.
Right.
But the actual school safety office, we had to, that was a new position in office last year, or this year. So this is what's associated with it. We didn't anticipate that all of the tactical gear and uniforms and everything would be paid for out of that state grant, but it was.
Okay.
So that's why we can decrease this budget.
Got it. Ms. Cuthbert and Ms. Haynes. Ms. Cuthbert and then Ms. Haynes.
Could you, the difference between an SRD and a guardian is they're capable, they're very complementary to one another, but what can the SRD do that the guardian cannot?
The only thing is arrest and detain. So they can detain and arrest someone. Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. What
Guardian
about
cannot.
Baker acting? When it comes to violence on campus?
They can. So they can Baker Act. So SRDs can, our guardians cannot. But we have, through Dr. Haller, mental health professionals that now can Baker Act as well. So they would do is ask for a transport.
Okay, when there's an emergency situation on a campus and the guardian is not able to evaluate that, what does a principal do then?
So, so at our elementary schools, just like they've been doing before, if there's an emergency on campus, if it's, they would just call a non-emergency number unless it's an emergency. They would call 911 and ask for assistance. This is what they would do. So, in the case of a Baker Act, we have staff that would respond through Dr. Hall's team and make that evaluation, and then do what they need to do for that child if it's a Baker Act. If it's a major another major disruption, for example, a brawl or something like that, the SRD can go in and try to assist, just like the administrative staff would be. So would the guardian, would go in and try to de-escalate that situation as well. If there's anything in criminal nature, then we have to call law enforcement to be able to handle those situations.
Do you happen to know if law enforcement usually has an officer or two that usually does that in particular? Because I'm thinking about the child. Him or herself, an SRD would be able to accompany that child, and that child may have come up on that SRD's radar before, so there might be a different form of handling of that child to de-escalate him or her. But if you just call in an officer, there's that tendency not to know or to be as have more kid gloves on handling that child. I'm just thinking of the welfare of the child.
Yeah, so our guardians, we've done a great job this year of training our guardians on de-escalation techniques and actually looking at and building relationships with our students, and especially those students with special needs, so they understand what those needs are based on an ESE standpoint or IEP standpoint, and then they get to know those students and know how to de-escalate them. We've had several cases, good cases, where my guardian has resolved the issue. We didn't have to call anybody else.
Okay, Thank you, sir.
And you want to touch on the megahertz radio that the Guardians have also.
Yeah, the 800
In a
megahertz
true
radios.
emergency.
Right.
What they can do.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, we do have a two-way radio for school settings, but we also have a 800 megahertz radio that ties in with their zone where they're actually at now, and all they got to do is hit the radio, and they're right on their airway, and staff would be there. Law enforcement would be there. Thank you.
Ms. Haynes.
So later today, when we go into the school board meeting part, there's an item up for consent that's for $500,000 for school violence protection program. So how does that play into this piece?
So school violence, I think that's underneath Ms. Rachel Hazel's area, and I think that's Dr. Hall and so their program coming forward. I think that's where that one's at, right? I'll have to go back and look at it. I don't have it with me right now, but that's where that's at, and I think it's part of their programs that they're looking at.
Well, it actually says it's for district-wide communication system that allows the mass messaging, a retrofit of the security radio system with repeaters to eliminate dead zones and improve communication.
Oh, that's, okay, I'm sorry, I was thinking something different. So, yeah, so what we're looking at by statute, 7026 and 7030 now says that we have to do a complete evaluation of every one of our campuses to make sure there's no dead zones inside those campuses. So that's money set aside to make sure we can go do the evaluation and fix, either with repeaters or they have different products that they can put in to actually amplify, not using a repeater to amplify the signal coming out. That's
So-
what that one is.
So we've
That's
got the
capital
grant.
half-cents.
So we've got the grant now that's gonna pay for the salary of like the guardians and everything. We've got $500,000 coming from the federal government for this piece of it. Is there any other funds that are coming in that cover this particular topic?
So half-cent sales tax actually covers quite a few things underneath the safety and security, the single point access, the locking systems, the camera systems, the Sally ports right now that we're putting in. A lot of those things are half-cent sales tax. And we are applying for grants as well to offset a lot of those costs. So we don't have to use general fund. We're using capital or half-cent sales tax or grant funding to resolve those issues.
So is there any way at some point to just have maybe a one-page breakdown that shows where each fund source is coming that is covering this area?
Sure.
So we can just have a total view of this is really what, because this is a little,
Oh, I know.
but
$5,000 isn't
just
what
to
we're
see
spending.
this
Sure.
is what safety and security is costing.
Right.
And this is the sources it's coming from. We've got $500,000 under this grant, we've got the state piece and all that. I'd just like to see it in a whole picture.
Yeah, and I can send you that as soon as I go back to my computer, because I already have it done.
That's a very good point, because it's a staggering amount of money. Staggering. And it's annual that you'll see. Ms.
Yeah.
Cuthbert, do you have a
So-
question?
I have to
To
maintain later.
piggyback, because it could go away next year. And we need to be advocates for our own financial budget. So when we speak to legislators, or when we're at the Florida School Board Association, we can bring up those issues to have that pressure put on our legislators not to drop the ball in funding our safety and security. I have one more question. I almost forgot what it was. Are you going to be giving us a list of the schools who are going to be receiving replacement or new security cameras?
Yeah, so we've just finished looking at, we just started the summer project. So we have it, we're building that currently out right now. And we know which systems we're gonna be using. So what we used we looked at the, outside the 2-mile walk zone, the criminal activity outside the 2 miles of the school. Looked at interior, inside the school, we looked at vandalism, and then a number of referrals to make our determination which school goes first, because every school wants to go first. So then we set aside what we're gonna do, and each school will be touched as soon as possible within the next 18 months over time. We will have that broken down, which school starts first, which one's last, moving forward here fairly soon. I can send that to you.
Thank you. I'd love to know. Thanks.
Sure.
Questions, more questions? Yeah, and just in regard to the cameras, since Ms. Cuthbert brought up, are they going to be able to be accessed through your phone?
The answer is yes. They're all going to be IP addressable cameras, so that system and be.
That's good.
will be all tied back into our technology. And so what we're trying to do is when we buy these systems, make sure we can have one platform that supports everything instead of having multiple platforms out there. And so, yes, it will be. And so as we're going forward, we'll have those put in place.
Great. Just like your Ring doorbell.
That's it.
There you go. All right.
Sir.
Let's keep going and talk about food.
Yeah, so Schoolway Cafe is a federally funded program. A lot of their stuff comes from the Department of Ag. The statutorily requirements of things they can and cannot spend their funds on. And that's a 7 CFR 210.14, and it goes through A through Z, if you want to kind of look at that at your spare time. What we're looking at is 4 position upgrades from a level 2 to a level 3, and that's a cost of about $8,000. On the slide you have here, excuse me, we look at total revenue and then the beginning fund balance every year. And you can see these funds, as we move forward, they're to be used to increase or modify school campuses, their cafeteria lines or their tables inside, and also for staffing and new product being put forward out there for our students to eat. I don't know whether you have any questions there, but we're in pretty good shape there. We do have projects that we work with facility maintenance on that are federally funded out of out of federal funds to redo serving lines and their equipment.
Questions about Schoolway Cafe?
Yes.
Ms. Cuthbert?
I see there's a reduction in the beginning fund balance. That's a significant reduction. Is that okay?
Project, yes, it is. So what we do is we're required to keep 3 months in our reserve for federal funding. So anything above that, we earmark for additional projects, going down the line. One we just did was at the warehouse. It was just completed there. So we have several of those moving forward through the summer. So that money would be earmarked there or spent there.
All right, thank you.
Technology services, we're moving on. We have a couple slides there. So technology services, bless you, somebody, $149,000 reduction, 2.5% reduction overall. I think the biggest one you kind of want to see here is down at the service contracts and software. It's an increase based on all of the software packages we have out there. It's a 3 to 5%. Historically, what you normally see on an annual renewal basis. So that's why we increased that by $129,000. So any questions on technology? I got some more slides on technology, but
again,
before I go from here.
The maintenance and repair.
So maintenance and repair, actually, and I can have Mr. Cicchetti come on up, but that line, I think, it was moved up. That's the one we moved up to technology-related professional and technical services. So we really don't mean it's a repair, it goes up from there.
All the maintenance is going to be called
technical and
technical
related
services instead of maintenance.
Majority of it went there.
Right, some of that was a redefinition in the Red Book.
Yeah, obviously, has to be, because I'm thinking, oh, you mean like nothing's going to break at all? That's good.
Okay.
That's great. Okay.
So everything else is
that answers my question. I mean, I realize it.
Okay. Next slide.
Next slide.
So here we have some cost increases that we kind of want to go over from a general funds standpoint. So the first one is Cisco Voice and Data Hardware Software. That's the plan set up. That's all of our phones and all of that system. So it's increased by $400,000. JAMFA MDM license increases. It's a 3-year license agreement. There's 100 new iPad licenses that are out there for Schoolway Cafe and transportation for time clock and ERP projects. So that's increased there. We have a FL Code membership. It's for EdFi. It's for a district. It's $5,000. This next one is a hardware deployment support. As you know, every summer we deploy lots of computers, and so this, if we utilize this, would be non-technical support. That means they take out $96,000. Those are showing under general fund, but we actually we use capital transfer to cover those 2 costs there. So that's why it's on here. It's a general fund expenditure, but it's covered by capital funding. And then the Oracle SaaS support is a critical escalation support that we need for advanced support for the ERP moving forward.
Yeah. Okay, I think the board was well aware of all of those coming in. Yep, go ahead.
All right, so the next slide is our cost savings. So based on consolidation of different products that we have out there under the Microsoft agreement, we're starting to see some bang for a buck, basically. So we're starting to see some reductions. So Adobe Connect, actually, it's a $55,000 savings there, and if you can read through the rest of them, but we get $266,245 in contract savings this year moving forward. So we're looking forward to that. Any questions over that?
Don't see any. Go ahead.
Okay. Next slide is each position requested is being offset by eliminating of 4 vacant positions and 1 administrative retirement. Total savings is $242,274. So when you go back and look at our staffing requests, we are looking at adding 3 additional positions: a manager for the enterprise customer experience, network technician 1, and a student information analyst. We also have 2 reclassifications of 5 position level changes. When you start looking at the total increase that we would be looking at, would be a net increase of about $20,000 based on our working with deleting some positions and adding these positions.
Questions?
So,
Ms. Haynes?
thank you. Over on the cell phone piece, your cell phone bill increased by $20,000 for the year. Is that due to just adding these few positions, or why did it increase that amount?
Not necessarily those positions, definitely. Same title, Student Information Analyst. They're just currently considered under USA title at the moment.
So they're gonna go from USA to Student Information Analyst?
Analyst. Mhm.
And what are your 5 position level changes?
Those are in applications, student and business applications. So those are for leads. That's our second largest department inside of the division. And typically what we find is when you have the zone of managerial oversight, when you get into the evaluations and management of tasks on a daily basis, what it assists with is supervision of a smaller group. So you don't have 1 over 21 or 1 over 18. You have about 5. So you get a range of anywhere from 4 to 5 under each level of supervisor that's underneath the manager. So it separates out that supervision that's so great right now that one person has to make sure that they're managing and doing all the evaluations while also overseeing the larger projects that are going on. So they're basically 1 level up is what that's going for.
So they're people you already have
Current people.
in-house, and
Correct.
you're changing their level. And then, explain to me what the manager for the enterprise customer service experience is going to do, and do you have anyone currently doing that?
Yep. So this is a brand new position as far as title goes for our district. It's always had various titles. It's either been supervisor under that context, and it would either encompass public records, it would encompass general call support, right? So those are for when we call 20,000, that's usually outside entities calling and not necessarily always internal staff. So what we did was when we had certain retirements and certain changes in our vision for customer support, right? The experience all the way from inception of either a call or an email that comes in to resolution. What we needed to do was consolidate support, bring it all under one so we don't have disparate general and technical. We're bringing all that together. So this individual who we've recently hired, his name is Eric Fort. This individual, his role is to literally bring together the experience for the customer, no matter who they are, student, staff, parent, guardian, somebody outside this district looking in, to be able to consolidate the information for them, drive them to the new website, make sure that they're literally building that experience for the customer, especially for our internal group. When we're talking about, I know Mr. Colon brought it up oftentimes in the past when we're looking at the new systems, ERP, SIS, it's so that we have a one clear path for support, and then building through that relationships in and around tech services and around the district outside of just our group, and trying to dispel the myth that we just do technical support on the phone. It's really guiding everyone around, especially with all the change that's coming in. It's going to be the clear point of escalation as things come in, as well as just building up to our first call support. So we actually moved 6 USAs from the field into that area because that's going to assist us with much more of the remote support. And much of that is due when you heard Mr. Aiken talk about why certain staff move in, how are we going to be able to determine appropriate levels of staffing later on. One thing my division is looking at is resolution, SLA times, service level agreements, and those are going to be coming in front of you. You're going to hear a lot more of them, especially as board members. You're going to hear it may take, let's just throw a number out, 20 days for a projector bulb to be repaired. Well, why is that? Well, that could be attributed to either the staff is unboxing 7,000 devices, so they're not actually out there assisting a ticket, right, for the most part, but we're also consolidating that support around where remote support is possible, things that are happening on your device, things that I could talk you through that don't require a physical body to be out there. So we did a lot of analysis over this last year to see what really required hands. And then we're going to trim that down, see where those SLAs really are. And then when we provide that, that's a date certain. It'll be, let's just say it's 20 days. If we don't like 20 days and we can say it's 20 days accurately, well, you can bring it down by. You can raise it by. Right? I want to be able to provide the board, the district, everyone around the reason why we need increases in certain areas for staffing and support.
So what's your total number of USAs now if you're taking 6 of them out of the field to bring in to put under this?
14.
So you only have a total of 14, and you're taking 6 and bringing them in, you're only leaving 8?
14 remaining
So you're
in
gonna,
the field.
So you're gonna leave 14 remaining in the field that will actually be walking into the schools to touch the item. So will they only walk in to touch it if it does? Is the thought that the first line of defense will be this phone call?
You're right.
And the 14 only then go in if someone on the phone can't fix it?
And escalates it to the field, right? And then the USA 2s that are over those hubs would then delineate. They'll meet weekly to delineate what requires priority. And so that's going to start to determine set priority. So for example, if a printer goes down, okay, we have the copy center. So that is the one resource we could say we have an ancillary source. But if a projector goes down, that's usually a much needed resource quicker. So we would be able to prioritize if a projector and a printer ticket came in, which one gets eyes on first, or if a computer goes down completely and it's in testing window season and so on. So we're going to have to build those priority levels and then constantly discuss that. But you're absolutely right, Jamie. That is where the call comes in. If it cannot be remedied via the remote support, it needs hands-on. It'll be determined, kicked over to the hub as a task, and then that hub will then work through their priority.
So you already had some USAs in the hub. So how many did you have prior to adding 6?
How many did we add? Rephrase.
Okay, you already have a call center. We
Yeah,
already
okay,
have a call center.
I got you. Okay, yeah, so we had two, and when we considered where we were, we had 2 USAs on the technical call support desk. So that would be option 2 if you call 20,000 at that time, just 2 individuals reporting, and we had 2 others that's kind of floated in, so 4 if we were in high volume. General support was a mixture of individuals. It was a mixture of a USA 2, a couple OSs, and then various titles in that, but not necessarily anything that was centered around customer support. They were just assisting more or less.
At this call center where we have a manager, how many individuals are there going to be?
11?
There's going to be 11.
Yep, there are 8 USA 1s, 1 USA 2, and 2 OSs. One of the OSs is our Spanish interpreter for any calls that need to move over that way.
Okay, so 11 individuals in-house for phone calls, 14 USA 1s in the field, and they're going to be divided between how many hubs?
At the moment, it's 3 hubs.
3?
Consolidated down, yep, and we have 3 additional USAs that are on a project team, and so that's a USA 2 that's over 2 USA 1s, and they're working on any major project to coincide with much of the half-cent sales tax work, attending meetings about new construction, renovations, rebuilds, so on.
So you've gone down to 3 hubs. Where are your 3 hubs?
East side, west side, and then the 3rd hub is kind of floating around the most needed area based on ticket volume. And right now our ticket volume is under 800 at this point, so lowest it's ever been to date.
I mean,
So
I
we're moving around.
appreciate a call center, but what I know personally from years of working with, being school-based, is there's a lot of people that the call center is not going to help them because unless it's described in very simplistic terms, and also you have to understand they're teaching a class and they don't have time to stop teaching because that's their main priority, to try to make their sound system work or the projector work or get their computer to work, that they can't log into what they need to log into. I'm just concerned that we're going to have 11 sitting now in a call center and only 14 hands out in the field to help those people when they need, I need to project this because it's part of my lesson. And most teachers don't even have phones in their classrooms unless they are then using their personal cell phone to make the call into the call center. And we're losing instructional time because.
No, absolutely right. And so some of the factors that came in around this was we take a look at the amount of hardware that's going in that's brand new and compared to the older hardware that we're removing on top of that. So what we're seeing there is modern hardware coming in, less support necessary in the break fix area, more support needed in the how to use area, areas of what am I looking to achieve, and that's more where learning technologies comes in, and then collaboration around the district with many of the other departments. So what we're finding is even if we're considering projectors, the newer projectors going in, right, the last 600 that we purchased that we're working coinciding with facilities to work through the district on to implement, those are laser projectors, right? So no bulbs, no overheating, no filter. So we're trying to consolidate new technology to reduce that hands-on, but then now we get the focus really on what makes the impact in technology, and that's how it's used, not necessarily the setup and function of, let's just call it a remote for lack of a visual, on that. But definitely we're seeing less tickets on the newer hardware, any existing hardware. That's where we're starting to target the refresh times. When do they get removed? Are they removed when they go down? And we kind of ride them out. So we're having a lot of those conversations right now when we're considering everything that's occurring with the new systems, the new digital materials coming in. We want to make sure the hardware's in place, but if they go down, what is our priority on that? So I understand where you're coming from, Jamie, especially, obviously, we've worked for many years, so having that time to step out, having that time to really get a hold, it was even still very difficult when we had people on the ground to get there when they had that immediate need. But we're working on other things in the background to kind of assist with. I don't have a phone in the room. Much of that you're going to hear a lot more of with our Microsoft contract, getting in more of a calling inside of either Microsoft Teams and so on,
Well, I mean,
but time.
You had more hubs out there at one point.
4
You
hubs,
brought
yeah.
the hubs down to one on the east, one on the west, and a floating hub. I just know that when it comes to technology, a phone call's not going to fix everyone's issue or allow them to even have the time to address it based on what their main priority is. And so we're putting everybody in a room to answer phone. I mean, we're almost matching what we've got sitting in a room to take in phone calls and hope that we can, if the person can even do it, that we can walk them through what we need them to do versus the people out in the field.
Yeah.
I think the other aspect of that is ramping up for the SIS and the ERP deployment, because you also currently have people that call departments, whereas now you're looking at this is kind of a year of adjustment, because I think we'll see more as we go along, as well as, training is something that really needs to be continued. We have a couple of positions that will go out and specifically train registrars and bookkeepers in specific areas and payroll. But it's kind of a refocusing of how a lot of the technology works. Like Mike said, there's a lot of new technology that's been invested in, and a lot of it can be fixed remotely. And so it is kind of a year of, looking at what we really need, and do we have the right, numbers in the right place. But certainly in that deployment, as we go live in systems, we need people that can take the calls and then deploy from there.
Okay, Ms. Cuthbert.
Do you know a couple of years ago, our average age of our computers are PCs were about a little over 6 years. Has that improved?
Yeah, it was actually probably closer to 8.
8 years?
No,
What is it now? Do you
now
know?
we're probably in the 2 to 3 year range. When you consider the amount of devices we've purchased since the half-cent sales tax came in, we're probably closer to 50% of our devices are within 2 to 3 years, and the other 50% are anywhere from 4 to 5, and then you have various desktops, but a small percentage now, less than maybe 2,000, that are hitting that 7 or 8 year mark. But desktops often have a longer life because you can do much more inside of a box than you can when it's a fashioned machine that's kind of enclosed.
Okay. I have I guess a personal, realistic situation. Middle schools, 6th grade middle school teachers are now doing that certification program for research or digital tools certification, and that's part of a superintendent's contract.
Yep.
They're using computers that are old, and then when it comes to the FSA testing, those laptops are being taken away from them and given to FSA testing. So when it comes to training or finishing the training of those students to take that certification, they don't have the computers anymore. Are we adding any of those certification programs? Are we adding current, up-to-date technology for those digital tools? Because a lot of kids are learning on 6, 7-year-old programs, and they need to be updated.
Yeah, so absolutely. So each of our deployments, I won't say for my department, we don't necessarily say these go here, right? For the most part, what we do is we work with the various departments, whether it's instructional services, whether it is directly with the school. Most oftentimes they'll call in and ask, I have a need. And this is where we're getting a deployment. Let's say it's 300 computers. Where best do you see that? And we'll talk back around the SIP, the school improvement plan, and what their goals are and what new initiatives may be in place. But not necessarily I purchased these for that. So the deployments are there. The numbers of devices are there. It's just usually a site-by-site basis, but we definitely work to assist in making sure we get devices where they ultimately need to be. But I would probably say for my answer, CTE is my area where it's almost guaranteed those devices are going to go in that space because they do oftentimes have a uniqueness to those devices, either high-end or much more detrimental to the academic day. But for the most part, we usually stick with a standard student device model with specifications and so on. So they work across wherever you are teaching in, whatever area of subject.
You need to look a little carefully at what the principals have allotted in those 6th grade classrooms. Because a lot of times the 6th grade certification programs don't get the latest information. They're allocated into the media center or to the ELA classrooms, the math classrooms. So those students, which I perfectly understand, need that, but also our certification programs are continually overlooked or pushed back. But I would like to know specifically when those computers are going to be given those certification, all those certification programs, especially at the middle school level, where we're trying to build those schools at that level in order when they go into high school, they can go into those, be more active at that academy level.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I do have concerns, like Ms. Haynes, about the touchy-feely person coming in, because a lot of us are, we have 50% of our faculty who are a little older, who don't quite understand it. They just want it to work. There needs to be something to help the older, the more experienced teacher hooking up these new computers and the new programs. And also about the new teacher. Is there, when we start having our 2-day, isn't it a 2-day training for new teachers? One's, I think, on July 31st, one's on August 1st. Is there a part of your department coming in and training those new teachers on our systems? Is that part of the curriculum in our new teacher?
I can't speak to whether we've been tasked with that or we've offered. I know my department will always offer. It's just what's on the agenda and how packed is the agenda based on what needs to get out there. But I can tell you When you consider our PLLs, our professional learning leaders, our personalized learning leaders, sorry, and the DLTLs, the digital learning teacher leaders, right? We all love the acronyms. We have one in every site, and those individuals are definitely brought into additional trainings to help expand on the touchy-feely part, the how to use, the what are your questions, the application part of it, right? Because for the most part, we want to make sure that those that we are training respect those that are training them, because it's one thing to say, I know how to do it, but you've never taught my class. So you have to have that commitment, right, that buy-in. So we have assistants out there outside of our technical USAs, the support that they're providing to make sure the devices stay up. But it's the functional use that we're kind of relying upon a smaller area to expand out. And we definitely have a lot of great help out in the schools to assist in that manner for the training, especially for new teachers. And what we're finding too, just to kind of touch on Jamie's response and your collaboration with, you know, individuals in the district would likely tell you that they wouldn't call 20,000 several years ago, if not even current this year. And that's for many reasons. Either they didn't believe the answer was there for them for the specific use that they needed, or it wasn't there because it was strictly for information gathering and to provide. But what we're working to do is make sure that that is an assumption is removed. You call in at 20,000 and that desk has either the information readily available because it's been provided to them, or can push you to where you need to be based on either our new website or to a department or to a specific individual that can get that response and then set up the training on that, right? The collection, because what we have right now, Ms. Cuthbert, is things coming in through email. And we all know when we get a lot of email, it's very hard to organize even that. And so there's a lot of requests that come in and you're trying to consolidate and collapse what everyone needs. And so to have that single point, that experience manager to be able to develop a proper manner of support, that's going to be, I think, something beneficial that we'll see down the road.
Which then you've just supported my point. When we have a brand new teacher coming into our county, we have a new ERP, a new SIS system, which is so critical to their everyday operation. And with emails, they have to know how to use them. I can't even, just getting used to their classroom, to their peers, to the curriculum, and then add all those systems on top of that. I really think your department needs to have an active involvement in training those new people.
Yeah.
Because if they're not trained, that just adds to the frustration, and we do not want to lose them. And if we can say, you're brand new, we understand the situation you're going to have, we care about your communication with us, we want to make sure you can handle all these systems, especially our new people.
Absolutely.
And we desperately need somewhere in that agenda that those issues need to be addressed for them so they can ask questions. And then even a follow-up. And at every campus, that your computer person needs to be able to be aware and not just wait for them to come, for the new teacher to come to them, but for them to get out of their office and go to those doors and say, are you doing okay in your classroom?
Yep,
do you have any particular assistance? Let us be, what we've been talking about today, proactive and not reactive.
Absolutely.
It's very important with our new system.
And some of the ways that our Learning Technologies Department does that very efficiently, and it kind of touches on both of that. They'll set up time to be at the school that's either requested assistance or has multiple new staff or just personnel who have questions in general. And they make themselves readily available by tandems and teams, so that way they're available all day on your planning period, after school, before school, whenever you have the free time. But at the same time, we can also follow up and go into your room with you that day or even the next day to make sure that you can model what was taught. And that's been a very successful approach to not just come in, let me tell you how to do something, but come in, let me tell you to do something. And if you need me to show you, we can also help you assist on that.
Well, a lot of times they don't even know what they need to be shown.
Exactly.
So it's the first couple of weeks that are going to be,
Absolutely.
who knows, maybe 11 people aren't going to even, they're going to be overloaded that first couple of weeks. So I think our gear up the first quarter might be more busy than the second or the third quarter, of course. So I just want a little more proactive. And who determines the agenda for those new teacher trainings?
That's through technology services. I do want to touch on that our new teachers to our district will be receiving ERP and SIS training right up front. You know, we have worked that into it. And then, by the way, you know, if you looked on Twitter and all that, that training is going on right now with our teachers, and also with our rollout of the new curriculum. So that type of training is happening, and I'd like to dovetail on what Mrs. Muller said a few minutes ago. We were told, especially you know, by Cherry Rhodes and GFOA, and also Focus, that you have to have a robust, basically call center, you know, because we know there's going to be problems, and there may be some workarounds that are needed. We can find trends quickly, you know, with what's going on. So we were following, you know, the advice of the professionals, you know, in this area. And so I just wanted to add that as well.
I think Ms. Haynes had a follow-up, and then we'll try to move on from here. Yeah.
Kind of to piggyback on what Ms. Cuthbert said and even what Mr. Russell said right now. So we've taken the advice of the new systems we've put in place. But here, unless I've missed it, here's the missing piece I think that we need to work on. So we need to get the communication out there that 20,000 now is the way to go so that we cut down on emails. We've got to be proactive, but we've also got to get the word out, and we've got to market it, okay? So that people will go to the right place. And my hope is that the 11 people that are going to be in there get some good, positive customer service training on how to answer those phones. And it's what I tell people all the time. You need a smile on your face when you answer those phones, because that person on the other end, they need to hear somebody that wants to help them and is there to help them. They've got to be empathetic. Not, because I'll tell you, emails have been coming because 20,000 wasn't what it needed to be, okay? People were not getting help or support, or they called in and their question didn't get answered. They just were like, well, we're, you know, put a ticket in, or we're putting a ticket in. And that whole, like, we need to market how to put a ticket in, like in simple steps. It shouldn't be this thing where somebody has to click 25 buttons to figure out how to get to it, where nobody gives them the directions. We need to market 20,000 if that's what we're doing now, and we're setting up this whole call center. And in the marketing, it needs to be, here's the things that we can assist you with if you pick up the phone and call. Absolutely. So that they know that's where I'm calling, instead of trying to call around the district or, you know, send emails not knowing if their emails are over. I mean, it all comes down to communication. Absolutely. And we've got to do a better job. And we got Kelly, and she does a wonderful job. Yeah. So, I mean, it's...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was thinking, we can do videos.
Some of the metrics, just so you're aware of how
because we got to change the perception of the way it was.
Absolutely. So some of the things we took into consideration also when working toward what was requested or suggested by the professionals was, when you consider what general call support, that would be just 20,000, has done in the past, they average about 100,000 calls a year. And that was anywhere from 2 people, if they were all present, to 6 to 7, handling 1,000 calls of various natures. Whereas our technical call, we would get anywhere from 5 to 10,000 calls. So we weren't getting as many technical calls as we are getting general calls. And that general call is where we're going to be looking to community information, obviously, the new website, drive where the information should be, could be, and needs to be easily accessible, because it's not been that readily accessible on our current platforms and so on. So I absolutely hear you, and definitely, you know, not to take any credit away, 20,000 was always working, you know, their tails off, but 100,000 calls with such small, it's very difficult to do. So that's where we're working to ensure systems and support are in place.
And just to summarize here a little bit, I think what we are all saying is, from the time as a teacher I recognize my projector doesn't work, how long will it take before my projector does work? And whatever that response time has been, say this past year, your goal is to improve
Exactly.
that response time from the time I notify you to the time it's fixed.
Absolutely.
That's all that matters. It doesn't matter whether you
Absolutely.
fix it by phone or someone comes over to fix it. I just want it fixed as quickly as possible.
Correct.
So I hope that what you'll do as you roll this out, that you'll monitor how are we doing? Because as teachers, we all know it's the most frustrating thing in the world when it doesn't work and it doesn't look like anybody cares. You're out there by yourself. However, I will say this. What you are proposing doing mirrors what is currently out there right now. When you call, whether you have Spectrum and something doesn't work, they'll try to talk you through the phone.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, let's start here, and let's do this, and let's do that. And then, if you still can't get it, then they'll say, you know what, we're going to send a technician over. If you call Apple, and they'll do the same thing. Let me talk you through this. Can you do this? You know, they're all, that's how it is nowadays. So I get that part of it, and I think that will be great. And as we continue to add newer technology, it will be easier to fix it through remote
support.
systems, which is awesome. But in the meantime, let's make sure we don't frustrate our
Absolutely.
teachers who are out there, and please monitor your response time, particularly, as Ms. Cuthbert said and Ms. Haynes, when we start the school year. That's when stress level is already way up here.
Correct.
Okay.
As far as advertising too, I just wanted to say that that's one of the components of all the massive SIS and ERP training that we're doing, is that we are directing people to that, and so that they do know where to call to get help.
Great. And
So
get that
that's
good customer
over and
training
over.
too, like you said, that's real important, as they do in the other major companies. Let's go ahead and move on, because we got a lot to cover here.
All right, transportation, pretty easy. It's a reduction of $254,640. It's an 11.4% reduction. The two big ones are the diesel fuel and gasoline. Diesel fuel, excuse me, is the largest one, and then we have vehicle repair parts. And as we start replacing our vehicles, which we have our yellow fleet, they're under warranty, so we can reduce those two line items. For diesel fuel, less mileage, actually, so it's kind of reduction, depends on what the cost of fuel is. We've done very well. We monitor all of that monthly, so that's kind of where we are. We are looking at, like I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, but adding an area manager back. In 2008, we removed one of the area managers. We have 6 areas that we're responsible for, the size of Rhode Island. And one area manager in Deltona has been handling both area 5 and 6. And it's time for us to add an area manager back there to handle the workload in that area.
No, that's Deltona, Osteen, DeBerry, Orange City, one person
That's correct.
managing all that.
Yeah. So now it's time for us to put one back there.
Sounds like you need some.
We have, based on technology increases in the vehicles, we have 2 mechanic positions, although they're called mechanics. One's a body guy, body shop guy. He's the only one in the district repairs, not only yellow fleet, but white fleet as well. And we have one AV, what we call an AV tech is what he's called right now. But we've added so much new technology onto our school buses that what we hired him for and what he's responsible for now is not mirrored. So those 2 positions we're requesting to increase their job description, change the job description, increase their pay.
Greg, are there any state grants or any incentives to purchase hybrid buses, electric?
Yeah, so we've explored a lot of that. There's several districts that are doing that. We talked about biofuel. We talked about our fuels that we currently use right now. Electric school buses is one of those. California is pushing those out right now. We monitor all of that to see if that's a direction we'll go to, and eventually. We have applied for several grants to where we start selling our buses. We chop them and they give us money back more than we could sell them for. So we can constantly look at what's out there, what's best for our district, And if we ever move in that direction, we will go back and look at the biodiesel
Yeah,
or
because
propane buses.
you just see the auto industry is clearly
Sure.
moving that way, and that is the way of the future. So I was just wondering if the school bus companies
They are.
doing that too. Okay.
One thing about propane buses or CN buses, if you start buying those buses, the infrastructure costs you millions of dollars to put in place. And then you have to retrofit your maintenance buildings as well. So it's not cost efficient for us to do that at this time. Once
Yeah.
those costs come down, then I think we'll be able to move in that direction.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
Okay, keep going.
So then 4 routers positions right now, they're OS3s. They're not doing OS3 duties. We're looking at reclassifying them into routers, which would be a different level. So that's it for operations, unless you have any questions for me.
Any further questions for Mr. Aiken? Great job. Great questions too, boys.
Thank you. Thank you very much for
Good job.
everything. Uh-huh.
Good job.
Good morning, Superintendent Russell, Chairman.
It's the
Simpson.
afternoon now, but that's okay.
Good afternoon.
That's
I've been
okay. We're
saving-
just having fun here. Go
I'm
ahead.
patiently waiting my turn. Good morning, or afternoon, all.
Afternoon.
Rachel Hazel, Interim Chief Academic Officer, and I will have the few slides for instructional services. And when we talk about instructional services, we are talking about not just K-12 curriculum. I think that's what a lot think of, but we also have digital learning and assessment, educational enhancements, ESE and student services, health services, federal programs, and grants development, professional learning, and school improvement are all part of those. A lot of our budgets, when you think of all of the budgets that we have, are the projects budgets, which are not part of this, but for our department budget, what you see reflects an overall budget reduction of $20,035, which is 8.3%. The major reduction there is in the supplies, general and building, and that is a reflection of the fact that we are purchasing 2 new curriculum materials for math and reading elementary, which causes a significant decrease in printing. And some other supplies that won't be necessary to purchase from that.
Thank you.
And then there's some differences in travel as well, and those adjustments were just made to reflect what we saw this year.
Yep.
Minor
Get it.
adjustments. The main budget issues that we are looking at this year have to do with our digital classroom plan and instructional materials. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk with you about both of those. The digital classroom plan, as you may know, saw a significant reduction this year from $1.3 million in previous years to $300,000, just over $300,000 this year. The digital classroom plan did funds several of our smaller initiatives and digital resources, which we are able to move into other fund sources. And it also funds some personnel, including our personalized learning leaders, which Mr. Cicchetti referred to earlier. We, in anticipation of changes in budgets, had enough rollover to fund those personalized learning leaders for 1 more school year, which would be this upcoming year. And they will be critical in the implementation of the new ERP and SIS as we move forward with that. So right now they're doing training for ERP. And so we do have that set aside to continue that for the next year. The other major fund source was instructional materials, and we presented that when we did the request to purchase the reading materials and math materials for elementary. We did look at all of the materials that we are purchasing, and reading and math will pretty much cover that budget. Where in the past we've had some other things that we were able to shift around to continue to renew. It also includes a gap year purchase for secondary. So although we are not formally adopting any materials this year, there are purchases that have to continue, such as secondary materials. Even though this would have been an adoption for them, we use those for gap year purchases. And I mentioned our continued support for the new ERP and SIS.
Questions? Any of this? Okay, I think this is information that we kind of knew was forthcoming, so we thank you for that.
It's good to go last.
All right, I think we're all set, right?
All right, so, yes, Ms. Muller.
Thank you.
Did you have a question
yes,
for
yes.
Ms. Muller? I'm sorry.
I just want to say thank you. We asked a lot of hard questions today, and I just want to thank all the staff here today for addressing our concerns and breaking it down into more realistic viewpoints to hear our concerns. So I just want to say thank you to everyone, especially for those who, like Mr. Young was up here a little longer than I'm sure he thought necessary. But anyway, I just want to say thanks to all of you for, I guess, supporting your own program. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Superintendent, any final comments about this one? No? So, all right, are there any other items on the workshop agenda? Are we complete?
We're good.
We all finished? What?
It's gonna be removed to be.
Supposed to be that end of course exams discussion as part of the workshop, and now that's going to be part of the school board meeting. It's going to be added to the school board meeting. And that was a request by Ms. Hazel? Okay. Where is that going to be on the agenda? Is it already on the?
Presentations, yes.
Under presentations? Okay.
It got put on both by mistake.
I asked that question too. I think it's the only present.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
And there'll be
Yeah,
no
it's there.
superintendent's presentation.
Okay. So I think the meeting should go rather quickly this evening here. I don't see anything else. All right, then the workshop is adjourned, and we'll be back at 3:30 for the regular school board meeting. Thank you.